Within the Lyceum Magic Academy's 7th sealed prison, a young man approaches a barred cell. Inside, a woman with dark wings and small horns regards him from her bed, noting that she has never seen him before. He looks back at her, his hand on the cape over his shoulder, and asks who she is. She beckons him closer with a sly smile, remarking that his is a fine and good name. He stands before the bars and formally introduces himself as Eugene Santafield, reflecting internally that this single encounter would change his destiny. This woman is Irenaeus, the fallen queen who ruled the southern continent in ancient times. Once a high archangel, she was cast down to the lower world after incurring the goddess's wrath. Her overwhelming beauty and sweet voice drove everyone insane, until she was eventually defeated by a hero and sealed away. Or so is thought. In the present, a sharp voice suddenly shouts, accusing someone of being late. The voice belongs to Ellie, who is none other than the fallen queen herself. She sits up in bed, annoyed. A young girl, Samire, tries to placate her, addressing her formally as my lady, the demon queen, and insisting that the person in question is on time. As Eugene walks away in the background, he seems oblivious, thinking only of how undeniably beautiful Ellie is. Later, alone with Ellie, Eugene stands with a basket of supplies. She reminds him of her rule. He is to call her Ellie when they are alone. He quietly affirms that he understands. He seems momentarily flustered, but quickly pivots the conversation. Changing the subject, he asks if she wants to eat, specifically mentioning the wine she had requested before. She looks at him with a sly, knowing smile. Before they eat, she tells him he must first fulfill his duty. Her hand comes to rest on his shoulder as he lies down. That duty, she begins to explain, is to become a sacrifice. With his head resting in her lap, she clarifies that his purpose is to offer his life force to the demon queen. He lies awake, his gaze fixed on the sleeping demon queen beside him. He reflects on the past, recalling that about a year ago, after he transferred to the Magic Academy, Irenaeus, a being of otherworldly beauty, awakened from her ancient seal. His memories drift to the chaos of her awakening. She had emerged in a murderous rage, her powerful miasma so potent that only the headmaster could approach her prison. The entire academy was thrown into a desperate state, searching for a way to stop her. It was then, based on the results of his transfer exam, that he was chosen for the task. His selection was due to a unique trait, an exceptional power in white magic. He recalls that initially, his role was simply that of a caretaker offering sacrifices. This duty, however, evolved into a more continuous relationship after the demon queen took a particular liking to him. Pulled from his reverie, he watches as Irenaeus awakens with a soft yawn. She sits up, the bedsheets draped over her, and looks at him. Eugene, she asks, are you not going? He stands by the bed, holding a basket, a questioning look on his face. Her question refers to the event being broadcast on a large screen in the room. The relay device shows a live feed from the final dungeon, where a hero is currently engaged in battle with a colossal serpent. He gazes at the screen, the words dungeon exploration echoing in his mind as he watches the distant figure of another hero confronting the beast. Irenaeus gently squeezes his arm to get his attention. She reminds him that this is the final dungeon, created by the gods themselves. With a confident smile, she declares, I'll support you. With my talent, she continues, musing that it would be interesting if he were to go. Eugene understands her motive. She is bored of watching the same people explore the dungeon through the relay device. As she calls his name expectantly, he looks down at the basket in his hands, his mind fixed on her words. Support, huh? He thinks with a heavy sigh. Behind him, Irenaeus leans forward, her expression hopeful. He remains silent, his gaze downcast as he contemplates her previous offer. Seeing his hesitation, Irenaeus leans forward across the table, her expression insistent. Just make a contract with me already, she urges. She elaborates on the proposal, her voice a tempting whisper. By gaining her power as the demon queen, she explains, even he, who is incapable of using attack magic, would be able to wield a powerful magic sword. She frames it as a mutually beneficial arrangement. He would gain power, and she, in turn, would gain her freedom. The metallic clink of the shackle on her ankle underscores her point. Eugene quietly concedes the truth, admitting, that's right, I can't use attack magic. His admission triggers a vivid memory from 1 year ago. He sees himself as a student in his academy uniform, standing stunned in a grand hall. The results of his evaluation echoed in his mind. His sole talent was white magic. This single outcome had been devastating. At the age of 15, all individuals receive a blessing of talent from the goddess of fate, which determines their future path. Most receive multiple talents. Because he was not granted any form of attack magic, his dream of becoming a magic swordsman was instantly crushed, and things only got worse as his peers began to mock him as the former top student. He walked the academy halls alone, his head bowed under the weight of their scorn. The whispers and derisive smirks of other students followed him everywhere. The social hierarchy of the world was cruel. A person's worth was measured by the quantity of their talents. Those with few, especially something deemed as useless as white magic, were considered worthless, regardless of past achievements. The question circulated constantly. How could the top student of the year be talentless? He clenched his fist in silent frustration as he was looked down upon. The whispers of pity, the calls of poor Eugene, were almost more humiliating than the outright mockery. The final rejection came from a female classmate. She approached him hesitantly, suggesting they should keep their distance for a while. Her words struck him deeply, and in that moment of profound isolation, he realized he had fled to the academy only to find himself trapped once more. Back in the present, his grip tightens on a bottle as he weighs the memory against the opportunity before him. For someone who can only use white magic, Irene's proposal is undeniably tempting. As he hesitates, she smiles slyly and poses a direct question. Why don't you release me from here? She watches him, her offer hanging in the air. Eugene turns away, bottle in hand, and gives a single, blunt refusal. Nope. Irene's observes his usual indifference, while Samire puffs her cheeks in frustration. The Demon Queen, then, adds a crucial detail. In the first place, only the headmaster is capable of breaking her seal. He adds another reason for his refusal, stating that there's no way he could ever defeat the headmaster. Hearing this, Samire suddenly brightens, proposing what she calls a brilliant idea. Eugene should form a contract with Irene's and use the Demon Queen's power to overcome the headmaster. Eugene immediately shuts her down, warning her not to suggest such terrifying things so casually. Their conversation is cut short as a violent roar echoes from outside. Through the window, a massive inferno rages, casting a flickering, ominous light into the room. Eugene turns to face the disturbance. He stares out at the blaze, his expression tense. He questions how the grassland and forest area of the 5th level could be engulfed in such a conflagration. Beside him, Samire can only state the obvious. It is truly a sea of flames. As Eugene turns to go, his hand on the door, Ellie asks if he is leaving already. He confirms that his duty is done, adding that if anything abnormal happens in the final dungeon, the academy students are required to respond. She asks him to stay just until morning, but he declines, promising to return next week before departing. Watching him leave, a small smile plays on Ellie's lips as she thinks to herself how serious he is. Eugene walks down a long, empty corridor. Suddenly, a broadcast echoes through the hall, announcing that an abnormal situation has occurred within the final dungeon, the Tower of Babel. The announcement continues, issuing a summons for all students and explorers residing in the city to equip themselves and gather at the dungeon entrance immediately. Eugene, now in his academy uniform, listens with a grave expression. He looks out over the city-state of Quirce, his gaze fixed upon the massive structure that serves as its backbone, the Tower of Babel. It is one of the largest dungeons in the world, located in the center of the southern continent. Now, at the Lyceum Magic Academy, the top academy on the southern continent, Eugene descends a staircase. He knows that protecting the final dungeon takes priority over studies, a rule that applies even to the city's resident explorers. Nearby students murmur in panic, noting that the top explorers are away and that ordinary barrier magic will be useless against the reported flames. An academy official with a prominent mustache addresses the assembled students. He declares that a fire of this magnitude could not have ignited naturally and issues his orders. Rescue those left behind, investigate the cause of the fire, and engage in firefighting. Following these orders, Eugene arrives at the 5th level of the final dungeon. He stands alone before a stone archway, the entrance completely engulfed in a raging inferno. He approaches the blaze, feeling its heat. He realizes the flames are unusually intense, concluding it is almost certainly the work of a powerful fire attribute monster. As he stands before the impassable wall of fire, a voice emanates from within the inferno, offering him a proposition. A mysterious figure urges him to make a contract, promising that by doing so, he will gain the ability to use a powerful magic sword. He clenches his jaw, dismissing the thought. There is no way he can release the Demon Queen, the being who once ruled half the world, for such a selfish reason. As he stands firm in his decision, his attention is drawn back to the inferno before him. Amidst the unnatural flames, he sees a figure, a young, unclothed girl. Her eyes, wide with fear and brimming with tears, meet his. He wonders in disbelief if she was somehow left behind in the chaos. He starts to move, a denial forming on his lips as he takes in her vulnerable state, kneeling amidst the flames. He freezes as a new understanding strikes him. The flames aren't just around her. The girl herself is emitting them. He realizes he has no way to fight this. She has a human form, but she might be a monster. He is paralyzed by indecision, unsure of what to do. Suddenly, the girl clenches her fist, her face contorting in pain, drawing his immediate attention. He stares, his own shock and fear momentarily forgotten as he witnesses her suffering. The flames around them continue to flicker. He calls out to her through the roaring fire, his voice filled with concern. Are you all right? Without waiting for an answer, he removes his long coat and steps forward, extending his hand to the frightened girl. Her tear-filled eyes watch his every move, a mix of hope and fear on her face. Her small hand reaches out and takes his. As their hands touch, she tries to speak, but only pained, unintelligible sounds escape her lips. Standing amidst the magical fire, Eugene realizes that he and the girl cannot understand each other through words. A thought strikes him as he remembers the fire-resistant rescue cloak he carries. He hesitantly offers the cloak to the girl, suggesting she at least put it on. The girl flushes deeply, completely flustered by the gesture, but she accepts the garment and puts it on. Eugene watches, relieved that she at least understands he means no harm. Now clothed in the rescue cloak, she stands before him. He extends a hand, suggesting they descend together. As he does, the magical flames surrounding them suddenly recede. He looks at her with a gentle smile, thinking to himself that she's a kind girl, even though his barrier magic would have protected him regardless. He takes her hand to lead her away. She looks up at him with wide, wondrous eyes and a bright smile, but then stumbles forward with a gasp. She collapses against him. He catches her, surprised, realizing she has suddenly lost consciousness. Her head rests against his shoulder, a faint wisp of energy rising from her hair as she lies completely still. Holding the unconscious girl, Eugene looks over his shoulder to see the demon queen has appeared beside them. He observes aloud that the flames are weakening. He looks down at the girl in his arms, his expression one of confirmation. A realization dawns on him, and he thinks to himself, as expected. He gazed at the girl's tranquil face as she slept, his mind turning over a single question. Was she the cause of the flames? It was a pivotal moment, though he had no way of knowing it at the time. He was completely unaware then that this girl would also be an existence capable of greatly changing the fate of a failure like him. The thought hangs in the air, a silent parallel to the demon queen, who stands pensively in her room, a slight, knowing smile on her face. Eugene holds the unconscious girl, observing the faint flames emanating from her body, a clear sign she is not human. However, he senses no malice from her, leading him to believe she is not a monster or demon, either. Seeing her troubled expression, he feels a wave of pity for her. Carrying her carefully, he walks through a large stone gateway, entering a bustling courtyard filled with onlookers. He presses on through the murmuring crowd, his expression tense. A voice from the throng observes that the girl he carries appears to be unharmed. Suddenly, a stout official points an accusatory finger, demanding to know if he is the one known as a dungeon destroyer. With a weary look, Eugene quietly confirms that he is. Another official then steps forward, declaring that His Majesty the King has summoned Eugene. The official insists he must also bring the girl, whom he mistakenly identifies as the dungeon destroyer. Eugene tries to protest, explaining that the girl is unconscious. His plea is met with aggression as armored guards step forward to block his path. One of them raises a hand and shouts, accusing him of planning to defy His Majesty's orders. The guards quickly close in, surrounding him completely. One guard thrusts the point of his spear toward Eugene's face, issuing a stern warning. Any further resistance will be deemed an act of betrayal against the king. Faced with the sharp steel and the grave accusation, Eugene closes his eyes, a bead of sweat trickling down his temple as he resigns himself to the situation. His destination is the imposing, columned building that houses the royal court. He was brought before a council already seething with anger. One member slammed his fist down, his voice booming with indignation at the unfolding events. From his outburst, a debate erupted. One man urged caution, suggesting they first verify the truth. However, a woman with a cold smile saw an opportunity, labeling the girl a rare magic creature to be used for progress. This was immediately countered by a representative in ornate robes, who grimly stated that any dungeon destroyer who harms the god's creation, the final dungeon, must receive capital punishment. Despite the furious debate raging above them, Eugene stood firm on the platform below, the girl now awake and standing behind him. He listened to their arguments, his expression hardening. He knew the precarious political landscape of his home, the dungeon city of Quirce. It was an independent state caught between three major powers: the Cardia Holy Kingdom, which venerated the final dungeon and would never forgive a destroyer; his own homeland, the Grenflare Empire, which advocated for military supremacy; and the Blue Sea Federation Republic, a collection of nations known for fierce internal disputes. It was because these powers all mingled here that Quirce's trials were meant to be impartial, with jurors selected from each faction. Seeing the proceedings turning into a summary judgment, Eugene shouted up at them, insisting that there was evidence to consider. He argued that a death sentence was too hasty, pointing out that the girl seemed unable to control the flames and that it could have been an accident. He added that they couldn't even communicate with her directly. His plea was met with scorn, as an official pointed accusingly, questioning how anyone could deny it was a capital crime when they all saw the flames erupting from her body. Beside him, the girl trembled, clutching her cloak in fear. His words were lost in the rising clamor. Cries for immediate execution clashed with shouts to capture her alive. The fear in their voices was palpable, centered on the terrifying power she had displayed. He tuned out the noise, his resolve solidifying. A single thought cut through the chaos. Even if they didn't know her true nature, it could never justify beating her to death. As he steeled himself, a sharp crack echoed through the hall. From the balcony above, a whip snaked through the air, aimed directly at the terrified girl beside him. Without a moment's hesitation, he lunged forward, spinning to shield her with his own body. He pulled her into his arms as the whip struck his back with a sickening thud, taking the blow meant for her. He stands firm, shielding the girl behind him as he appeals to the assembly, asking if they can't discuss the matter more rationally. The whip, deflected by his unseen magic, shatters against the stone floor, its threat neutralized. The council members stare, aghast at the sudden turn of events. From their balcony, the representatives watch the scene below with disbelief. The Cardia official voices the question on their minds, wondering aloud if Eugene managed to deflect the attack using barrier magic. Behind him, the girl clutches her cloak, her wide eyes fixed on Eugene's back, a mixture of fear and awe on her face. He glances at his own hand, momentarily bewildered. The action had been sudden, instinctual. His body moved on its own. Shaking off the thought, he bellows for silence, his voice echoing in the tense hall. The commotion is cut short by a new, authoritative voice announcing the arrival of His Majesty, the king, who demands to know the cause of the uproar. The regal man, King Uther, recognizes Eugene and greets him, remarking that it has been a while and that his white magic is as impressive as ever. This is King Uther Mercurius Pendragon, a man of immense stature. He is not only the king of the dungeon city Karaf, but also the headmaster of the Magic Academy, and lauded as the greatest magician on the continent. Taking his seat of judgment, King Uther declares that he understands the situation and will now hear everyone's opinions. He notes that Eugene was the one who brought both the Demon Queen and himself together. As the Blue Sea representative acknowledges his authority, the king prepares to adjudicate. The factions immediately make their cases. The Cardia representative insists the girl is a criminal who destroyed a holy relic and must be executed. In contrast, the Blue Sea Federation requests custody of her, arguing that her immense magic power could be a useful asset if handled correctly. King Uther's face contorts with displeasure as he listens to their self-serving arguments. "What are you saying?" he snaps, his patience clearly worn thin. Descending the steps with authority, he commands them all to calm down. With the room silenced, he makes his decree. First, they will hear what the girl has to say. He addresses Eugene directly, holding out an ornate, golden armlet. The king instructs him to place the device on Summary's arm. Eugene, who hadn't even learned the girl's name, looks surprised. Seeing his hesitation, the king impatiently tells him to hurry up. He turns his gaze to Sumire, who looks back at him with a nervous expression. Following the order, Eugene gently takes her arm and fastens the armlet around her wrist, where it clicks securely into place. With the device active, King Uther speaks to her. He says her name, Sumire, and asks if she can understand their words. The girl's eyes widen in shock as comprehension dawns on her face. As the assembled court watches intently, she gives a small, hesitant confirmation. She understands. A murmur of amazement ripples through the onlookers, who find it incredible that the king's artifact worked when all their magical tools have failed. Sumire herself looks overwhelmed by the sudden connection. Seeing his device was successful, King Uther continues his questioning, asking if she can now introduce herself. She states that her name is Sumire Sashioji. When asked where she came from, she can only say that she doesn't know. She woke up in a grassland with no memory of what came before. King Uther thoughtfully considers her claim of amnesia, but the Cardia Holy Kingdom's representative shouts a warning not to be deceived. He continues his outburst, declaring that her circumstances are too convenient and that she must be acting. The harsh accusation makes Sumire flinch, her face filled with distress. As the Cardia representative's fists clench in fury, the representative from the Blue Sea Federation calmly places her hand over his, a silent gesture to quell his anger. Ignoring the suspicious murmurs of the court, Eugene focused on the girl beside him. He spoke softly, encouraging her to take her time and not to mind the others, before gently asking if she could remember anything else at all. As King Uther also offered a comforting word, telling her not to mind them, Sumire's eyes widened. She suddenly cried out, "Wait!" Her outburst drew the immediate fury of the Cardia Holy Kingdom's representative, who slammed his fist down and insisted that all statements must be verified with the appraisal skill. In response, the representative from the Blue Sea Federation calmly reminded him that they had already tried this before the trial, and the skill had failed to work on her. This revelation elicited an intrigued "ho" from the king. The Cardia representative began to stammer that there must be a mistake, praising the experience of the court's appraisers. However, another official smoothly interjected with two possibilities. Either the girl was using anti-appraisal magic, or the court should perhaps question the ability of its own appraisers. King Uther addresses Eugene, noting that his appraisal eye allows him to see everything about the girl. He asks Eugene if he wants to know her identity, then dramatically reveals her to be an Ifris, a human god of flames, a mythical race believed to have vanished in ancient times. He elaborates that the Ifris are from the mythological age, a race that predates humanity on Earth. This means, he concludes, that the girl is not a resident of their world. The revelation stuns Eugene, who struggles to grasp that a legendary being, thought to be extinct, has reappeared. Turning his attention to the girl, King Uther formally welcomes her to Lyceum Magic Academy. With a grand gesture, he declares that they welcome reincarnators from other worlds. Sumire looks up at him, clutching the cloak around her, taking in his words. As she is welcomed, Eugene internally processes the situation. He recalls hearing about reincarnators, individuals who suddenly appear from worlds with different civilizations. It is said they often receive excessive blessings from gods or are reborn as special races. He realizes this is the first time he has ever seen one in person. His thoughts are interrupted by King Uther, who remarks with a smile that it has been a long time since they've had a guest from another world. As the king speaks, Eugene, with a look of resolve, calls out for them to wait. Before Eugene can continue, a representative from the Blue Sea Federation interjects. Addressing the king, he declares the girl a valuable guest and formally requests the honor of having the Blue Sea Federation host her. In response to the offer, King Uther pauses, his gaze turning thoughtful and unreadable as he considers the proposition. His contemplation is brief. He turns to the representative, his expression hardening. He states that someone shot an arrow at the girl earlier, likely to test her abilities, and pointedly asks if the representative believes he is ignorant of the culprit's identity. The pointed accusation makes the representative flinch and break into a sweat. Pressing his advantage, the king questions whether the Blue Sea Federation has the luxury for such schemes. He then delivers his terms. If they want to take the girl, they must cover the cost to repair all the fire damage she caused. The representative grimaces, clearly distressed by the demand. Cornered and unable to respond, the representative can only bow his head in defeat, offering a mumbled apology to King Uther. From the balcony above, Eugene and Samire observed the exchange. He stood before the court as the representative from the Cardia Holy Kingdom addressed him. The man began by stating that those from another world should be treated with care, but his tone quickly hardened. He demanded to know what King Uther intended to do about Sumire's crime, declaring that the destruction of the Babel dungeon could not be forgiven. In response to the accusation, the king posed a quiet, pointed question from his throne, asking if that wasn't what the representative's own goddess had taught. He then elaborated for all to hear, asserting that Sumire was not the evil demon the representative seemed to fear. The king explained that the recent incident was an accident, occurring only because she had just arrived in this world and lacked any knowledge about her new race. Faced with this reasoning, the representative conceded, acknowledging that showing kindness in this situation would indeed align with his goddess's will. Nearby, Eugene simply stated his understanding of the matter. He internally concluded that it was not his place to worry. He knew that once the trial concluded, Samire would be taken to a facility appropriate for her race. Beside him, Samire clutched her cloak, her expression anxious as the discussion about her fate continued without her. He resigned himself to the thought that they probably wouldn't meet again, silently addressing the distant King Uther as Your Majesty. However, the Cardia representative suddenly pivoted, questioning why Eugene, an imperial citizen who brought her back, didn't have an obligation to help her. He pointed out Eugene's sudden interest after learning of her rarity, framing it as a citizen's duty to strive for the empire's prosperity. King Uther thoughtfully conceded that the man had a point. Seizing the opportunity, the king smiled and made his declaration. He appointed Eugene as Sumire's guardian and announced that the academy would cover all restoration costs for the fire damage. His gaze locked onto a startled Eugene. He asked if he understood, reminding him with a sharp look that in the dungeon city, the king's words were absolute. With the weight of the royal decree upon him, he turned to Sumire. A bead of sweat traced its way down his temple as he accepted his fate, telling her, I will be. Sumire looked up at him, her previous anxiety replaced by a gentle, hopeful expression. He stands stiffly, the weight of the king's declaration settling upon him. Beside him, Sumire looks up with wide, uncertain eyes, her hands clutching the simple cloak that covers her. His gaze drifts away from her, a single thought echoing in his mind. Her guardian? A heavy silence hangs in the grand hall. The court, observing from the balcony above, remains still, their judgment unspoken but deeply felt. The demon queen, Ellie, sits with a displeased expression, questioning Eugene's late arrival. She pointedly asks if he was delayed because he was busy with the acceptance of the girl from the recent incident. Standing before her, Eugene looks weary, admitting his fault and explaining that his week has been hellishly busy. Ellie turns away from him, her jealousy palpable. She complains that he is only paying attention to the otherworldly girl, and that it's boring. As Eugene tries to explain that he can't help it, a small, pouting version of Samire appears in his thoughts, declaring that she won't listen to any excuses. As he faces her displeasure, a bead of sweat rolls down his temple. He internally observes that her mood is even worse than usual today. His thoughts race as he realizes the delicate situation. He must, under no circumstances, let Ellie find out that he plans to meet with Samire again after their current conversation. The scene shifts, flashing back to 1 week prior. Samire, now clad in a protective cloak, stands before Eugene. She formally states that she will be in his care, and he replies that he will show her around the academy immediately. It has been 1 week since she arrived in this world. Sumire's mind drifts to her arrival. She recalls being able to remember nothing but her name, Samire Sashioji. She was reincarnated as an Ifris of the fire god tribe, a condition that now causes her body to spontaneously emit flames. As she follows Eugene through the grand halls, she reflects on her recent experiences. Since coming here, she has only seen senseless things and faced terrifying situations. However, a glimmer of stability appears. She looks towards a prepared student dormitory room and acknowledges that having her life secured by a student of the Magic Academy is something she is grateful for. Standing by a large, sunlit window, she continues her introspection. All she could remember from the past week were vague memories of her family from her previous life. Her reflection in the glass stares back as she wonders if her previous life was merely an illusion. Even those extremely vague memories, she realizes, are gradually fading away like a dream. She internally questions her own identity, wondering who she has become. The thought is cut short as she is brought back to the present, realizing she doesn't have time to dwell on such matters while Eugene is leading her onward. He leads her through a lively courtyard, gesturing towards their destination as other students go about their day, training and socializing around them. As they walk, he continues to speak, guiding her through the unfamiliar environment. Their path ends before a grand, domed structure. Eugene announces that this is the School Affairs Division. Samire looks up in awe, remarking to herself how beautiful the place is. Inside, they are immediately met by an official with pointed ears and spectacles seated behind a desk. He addresses the girl directly, asking if she is Samire Sashioji. The official's sharp gaze makes Samire flinch. A wave of anxiety washes over her as she internally panics, worried that this man might be as intimidating as the powerful figures she has met before. Sensing her fear, Eugene places a hand on her shoulder. He calmly tells her to relax, and that all she has to do is answer the man's questions. His hand clenches reassuringly as he murmurs that it will be all right. Samire looks up at him, her expression filled with a mixture of apprehension and relief. The official repeats his question, asking once more if she is Samire Sashioji. Bolstered by Eugene's presence beside her, she gathers her courage and affirms her identity with a quiet yes. After a moment's consideration, the official gives a short nod. All right then, he says, accepting her answer as Samire watches him, uncertain of what comes next. She stares in disbelief as a book is presented to her. It is her official student ID and handbook. The official addresses her as Sashioji-san, confirming that the important document contains her personal information, skills, and status, and must be handled with care. Samire quietly processes the reality that this is now her identification. Clutching the new handbook, she looks up as she is formally welcomed to the Lyceum Academy. The administrative process concludes in the School Affairs office, with Eugene standing beside her as the official finalizes her enrollment. Now outside among the student body, Samire's face lights up with pure joy. She hugs the handbook to her chest, surrounded by drifting flower petals. Moments later, she and Eugene stand together on a quiet, elevated walkway, looking out over the vast academy grounds. He remarks that things went well, and she enthusiastically agrees. Samire adds that she is happy to have been accepted, attributing her success entirely to Eugene's help. As they continue walking, she thanks him again, not just for helping her at court that day, but also for showing her around the school. He dismisses her thanks, but she insists he is cool and gentlemanly. He looks away, stating plainly that this is all part of his job as her guardian. His professional response makes her laugh lightly, and she agrees that she knows it's a job. Her smile then fades, replaced by a more distant, thoughtful expression. She commented that the student handbook was quite large, noting that it seemed a bit difficult to carry around. As Eugene walked beside her, she quietly wondered what she had even been expecting from their interaction. He called out her name, drawing her attention. He then instructed her to hold the student handbook and try saying the phrase close book. Samire looked back at him, puzzled by the strange request. Upon uttering the words, the large handbook vanished from her hands in a brilliant flash of light, leaving her stunned. He then told her to try saying open book this time. Looking at her empty hands, she hesitantly repeated the new command. Instantly, the handbook materialized back in her grasp, much to her astonishment. Eugene explained that she could summon and dismiss it at will, assuring her it wouldn't be a burden to carry. She marveled at how convenient the feature was. He elaborated that the handbook size was a necessity, as it also served as an official student ID required for accessing public facilities or even entering other countries. To demonstrate again, he prompted her to say close book. The book vanished once more. As it did, a thought struck Samire, and she turned to him, beginning to ask about the final dungeon. He quickly cut her off with an apology, his expression turning pained as he looked away. As he began to walk away, 3 other male students approached Samire. Their leader commented on her being cute, while Eugene, who had only taken a few steps, stopped and turned back, overhearing the exchange. As Samire stands frozen, one of the students reaches for her, telling her she'll be hanging with them for a while. His hand closes firmly around her arm. Before he can pull her away, Eugene intervenes, his own hand clamping down on the student's wrist. Stop it, he commands. Samire looks up at him, a flicker of hope in her eyes. The student glares back, annoyed. He scoffs at the idea that she is with a useless guy like Eugene and angrily tells him to let go. His companions join in the mockery, telling Eugene not to get cocky. They call him a failure and tell him to stay out of it, given his zero attack power. Despite his effort, Eugene's grip fails to loosen the student's hold. He curses his own weakness. The insults echo in Sumaya's mind as she quietly processes the words. Failure. 0. Attack power. The student taunts Eugene, threatening that if he doesn't let go, he'll just have to cast healing magic on him. A clear threat of injury. Frightened, Sumaya begs him to let go, crying that he's going to hurt her. The commotion attracts the attention of other students passing by. 1. A young man with pointed ears spots Sumaya in the middle of the confrontation. He recognizes her instantly, murmuring to his friend that she is the one from another world. Sumaya's eyes widen in shock as the rumor spreads like wildfire. She overhears others confirming they saw her on the satellite system and questioning if it's safe to have someone who emits fire in the academy. The weight of her reality crashes down on her. She is an unknown, perhaps unwelcome, entity. She looks away, her expression troubled. Even if they call her a reincarnator, the label itself doesn't change the truth of her situation. Finding her resolve, she turns to face the hostile students. She admits it's true she is of an unfamiliar nature, a reincarnator from another world. However, she asserts that this is precisely why the Academy has given her a place to live, and that it has nothing to do with who she is as a person. Her mind races with the terrifying thought of her memories never returning. She questions if it would be okay to live a life with such a core part of herself missing. As this internal crisis unfolds, Eugene struggles against the students restraining him, shouting for them to let him go, but he is powerless to break free. Rejecting that fate, her expression hardens with determination. She declares that she doesn't want a life like that. There's one thing she must do: discover who she is by herself. Taken aback by her conviction, the lead student releases Eugene. He sneers, vowing that he'll remember this, before turning to leave with his friends. Once they are gone, he immediately turns to Sumaya, his voice filled with concern. He asks if she is okay and advises her not to pay any mind to people like them. He leads her away to a quiet stone balcony, where they stand together looking out over the vast cityscape below, a towering structure dominating the horizon. The silence is broken by Sumaya. She calls out Eugene's name, pointing decisively toward the tower in the distance. He follows her gesture as she explains her new goal. She wants to learn more about the final dungeon. She believes that going there might help her remember something, and could even reveal a way for her to return to her original world. Eugene confirms her suspicion that the tower is, in fact, the final dungeon. Her determined words hang in the air. He looks toward the sky, his expression unreadable as he processes her monumental request. He weighed her desperate request, his mind conjuring images of the final dungeon's horrors, a place teeming with unknown monsters. He voiced his doubt, reminding her that with his 0 attack power, he might not be of any help. Despite his warning, Sumaya's resolve did not waver. She simply acknowledged his concern, her gaze steady as she confirmed she understood. Her determination settled the matter. Standing beside her on a balcony overlooking the distant tower, he came to a decision. If this perilous journey could become her hope, then he would see it through. "Let's go together," he declared, and so their expedition began. Now joined by 2 other companions, a woman in a traveler's cloak and a man in a long, dark coat, Eugene and Sumaya stood at the very base of the colossal structure. Together, the party of 4 gazed up at the seemingly endless spire of the final dungeon, their quest about to commence. While walking along a stone path outside the academy, King Uther inquires about Sumaya's well-being. Eugene reports that she has adjusted to her new life quite well. The king smiles, pleased to hear it. He notes that Sumaya is looking forward to exploring the final dungeon the following week and reminds Eugene of his responsibility as her guardian, emphasizing her status as an important visitor from another world. Later, at the foot of the colossal tower that is the final dungeon, the king's words about responsibility echo in Eugene's mind. As he gazes up at the structure, Sumaya hesitantly calls his name. With resolve, he turns and tells her it is time to go. She then asks if he could speak to her more casually, explaining that his formal address feels distant. Though he finds it a bit awkward, Eugene agrees, noting it will make cooperation easier. He adds that, in that case, she should also speak casually with him. Upon entering the dungeon, Sumaya gasps in surprise. The entire first floor is a vast, open market area, bustling with people and lined with shops. She wonders aloud at the sight of commerce inside a dungeon. Eugene explains that the real exploration starts from the second floor. He directs her attention to a massive central pillar, revealing that they can use an elevator to ascend. Sumaya is shocked to learn of such a modern convenience here. He continues, clarifying that the elevator can instantly take them to any floor they have previously reached. Since he found her on the 5th floor, they can go straight there. Sumaya marvels at the convenience. Growing excited, she asks what the highest floor he can reach is. Eugene begins to answer that he can go up to the 9th floor, but she cuts him off, eagerly telling him to hurry up. His pace slows as his gaze drifts to a balcony above them. He spots a group of familiar figures, identifying them as people from the Azure Sea Federation, and his expression becomes guarded. As a loud adventurer from the group above boasts about conquering the 10th floor this time, Eugene advises Sumaya to simply ignore them. Seeing the potential for trouble, he suggests to a hesitant Sumaya that they take the stairs today instead. He carries Sumaya on his back, his mind set on a clear objective. The goal for this excursion is simple: to acclimate Sumaya to the environment of a dungeon. Above all, he resolves to avoid any unnecessary complications. Upon reaching the second floor, a wide grassland area, he sets Sumire down. He cautions her that monsters can appear from this point forward and instructs her to stay close. He explains a critical limitation. He cannot use attack magic, and the range of his barrier and healing spells extends only a few steps around him. Sumire nervously agrees. His statement catches her off guard. "Hey, Eugene can," she begins, her voice laced with confusion. "What do you mean you can't use attack magic?" He begins to explain the fundamentals. As a basic premise, he tells her, explorers fight monsters by imbuing their weapons with magical power. Without this enhancement, a plain weapon is practically useless. To illustrate his point, he produces a standard exploration knife. Holding the knife aloft, he declares, "With this." Sumire lets out a small, startled cry. Taken aback by his sudden action, she cries out his name in alarm, but he calmly reassures her. "No worries," he says, his expression confident. He focuses his intent, considering what will happen if he imbues the simple blade with his magic power. In a swift, deliberate motion, he slices the magically charged knife across his open palm. The blade flashes with power as Sumire watches, her eyes wide with shock. The energy dissipates, leaving his hand completely unharmed. Not a single scratch marks his skin, only a faint wisp of smoke rising from his palm. She stares in disbelief. "No way. How?" she stammers, unable to comprehend what she just witnessed. Eugene simply looks at his unscathed hand, a faint, knowing smile on his lips. He continues his explanation, revealing his unique ability, zero attack power. If he's attacked by a weapon containing magic, it heals him instead of causing harm. Sumire listens, her expression a mixture of shock and confusion. She stares, wide-eyed, struggling to process the implications of such an unheard of power. She voices her bewilderment, remarking on how strong he seems despite this limitation. Eugene clarifies that his ability doesn't hinder him in one-on-one fights against people, where he can engage normally. He offers a reassuring smile, telling her it's okay, and that if the situation becomes dire, he is perfectly capable of grabbing her and making a swift escape. Their conversation unfolds on a high, windswept plateau designated as the 5th floor of the Tower of Babel. Surveying the empty landscape, Eugene remarks on the strangeness of not encountering any monsters all the way up to the 5th layer. Sumire turns toward him, her expression questioning. He theorizes that while every layer should have had monsters, they are likely staying away, scared off by Sumire's immense and overwhelming magical power. He reflects internally that he never imagined her power would have such a passive, wide-reaching influence. Still, he feels a touch of disappointment, admitting to himself that he had wanted to gain some battle experience. His focus shifts back to the girl beside him. He calls her name, then asks directly if she was the one who found him in this place. She confirms his question, but adds that the scenery is different from what she expected. She had hoped coming here would trigger a memory, but it hasn't. Eugene's expression grows serious as he agrees, stating, "That's right." He considered his original plan. He had thought it best for Sumire to first get accustomed to the labyrinth. After that, they could have continued exploring at their leisure, searching for clues about her past. He looked out over the landscape, realizing the flaw in his logic. The area, once a scorched field, had been fully restored by the self-repair function of the final dungeon, Babel. With the environment reset, there was likely nothing left that could serve as a clue. He concluded grimly that there had been no point in coming to the 5th floor after all. Breaking from his thoughts, he called out her name. As she turned to him, he hesitantly asked if she remembered anything strange from the time before he found her amidst the flames. She struggled to recall the events clearly, mentioning monsters. She explained that monsters had come to attack her, but then they all ran away, she guessed because of her flames. Her words sparked a realization for him. Sumire hadn't encountered a single monster since they met. He reasoned that while the hope was slim, a direct confrontation with a monster might be the trigger needed to unlock more of her memories. With this new purpose, they ascended to the 6th floor of Babel. He told her they would continue ahead. Though momentarily surprised, she gave a determined yes in response. Almost immediately, their path was blocked. A large, wolf-like beast, flanked by 2 smaller versions of itself, materialized before them with a menacing growl. Sumire cried out in alarm, but Eugene quickly placed a hand on her shoulder, urging her to calm down. He instructed her to first observe the creature calmly. He considers that it might be too much to expect her memories to return right away, deciding they should just focus on combat. He has given Sumire only a shield for defense, hoping she can learn to protect herself, but is prepared to cover a retreat if necessary. Steeling herself, Sumire agrees and defiantly calls for the monster to come on. In response to her challenge, a wave of force erupts from her shield. The massive, horned beast recoils, letting out a guttural cry of fear. The creature immediately turns tail, whimpering as it scrambles away in terror. Sumire watches it go, utterly bewildered. She turns to Eugene, asking in confusion if the monster truly just ran away. She stares at her shield, internally questioning if the immense magical power she just witnessed, which she gauges as equivalent to 10 highly skilled mages, is the fabled power of the Ifrit. Eugene can only react with disbelief, exclaiming that she must be kidding. He wonders aloud if it could be some kind of enchantment. As he contemplates this, Somaya's shield suddenly erupts in magical flames, causing her to cry out in surprise. Eugene explains to a curious Somaya that what she's seeing is enchantment magic, which adds elemental effects to equipment. He notes that while he underwent training for it, it normally requires a specific spell, leading him to theorize that the Ifrit's magical power might automatically include this effect. He reflects on this development with a subtle smile, realizing that Somaya's magical power might be even greater than he had ever imagined. With this newfound understanding, they continued their search for monsters, ascending through the 7th, 8th, and 9th floors. But far from finding a trigger for Somaya's memories, they couldn't even find a proper battle, as every creature they encountered fled in terror. Their fruitless search brings them to the entrance of the 10th floor. As Somaya calls his name, Eugene admits that he hadn't planned for them to ascend this far into the tower. He stands with Somaya before a large, imposing gate. She looks up at him, asking if the area ahead is the boss room. He confirms her suspicion. His thoughts turn to the dangers ahead. He has witnessed many boss battles through the satellite system, but he realizes that protecting Somaya by himself would be difficult without any offensive capabilities. He questions if it's too dangerous to proceed. The worry deepens as he considers the possibility of something happening to Somaya if they continue. This internal conflict is plain on his face, and Somaya watches him with growing concern. Breaking the heavy silence, he turns the decision over to her, asking what she wants to do. Startled, she can only manage a questioning sound before trailing off. She finds her resolve, declaring that she wants to go. She explains that she wants to understand this power and test it further, just like her memories. As she speaks, Eugene's hand clenches, but he acknowledges her desire. Despite her determination, his mind is flooded with voices from his past, reminding him that it's impossible for him to fight, that he should give up since he can't use offensive magic. He knows that as her guardian, his duty is to ensure her safety and retreat. Yet, he internally rejects this path. He makes his choice, turning to Somaya with a confident smile and agreeing to give it a go. Her face lights up as she eagerly agrees. He watches her, admitting to himself that Somaya has potential and he doesn't want to be the one to stop her from moving forward, even if his reasoning is selfish. With their decision made, they step into the 10th floor boss room. Chaos erupts instantly as a colossal, shadowy beast lunges forward, sending other explorers scattering in terror. The force of the attack slams into Eugene, throwing him violently to the ground. He was not merely knocked down, he was captured. The colossal boss monster, its face a mask of grim contemplation, held his limp form effortlessly in its massive fist. It brought him close, exhaling a puff of air over him as if inspecting a curious trinket. Standing before a grand tower, Eugene instructs Somaya on the rules of engagement. He explains that to challenge a floor boss, one must first make a formal declaration, otherwise no battle will occur. He advises her that their first step is to observe the boss and make a sound judgment, a lesson she absorbs with a worried expression. Suddenly, their attention is drawn to a battle already raging nearby. Eugene recognizes the combatants as the party from the Azure Sea Federation they had seen earlier. A colossal, brutish monster brings a massive club down with devastating force, sending one of the armored knights flying upon impact. Seeing the brutal display, Somaya turns to Eugene with wide, panicked eyes, insisting that they must intervene and help the struggling knights. He firmly stops her. "No, Somaya," he commands, pointing toward the battlefield where the monster looms over its prey. He explains the severe consequences of their potential actions. The battle is being broadcast via a relay device, and interfering without permission will lead to punishment. Somaya is horrified to realize that, in the worst-case scenario, Eugene could be banned from entering the final dungeon ever again. His gaze remains fixed on the fight. He internally acknowledges that since the party has already declared their challenge, they cannot interfere from the outside. Still, he admits to himself that he wants to help if he can. He continues speaking to Somaya, clarifying that if the party were to officially request a rescue, it would be a different story. He tells her that, although it is harsh, she should watch the battle closely to learn what a real fight entails. As he speaks, the knights are clearly being overwhelmed. As if on cue, a desperate cry for help echoes from the battlefield. One of the last knights, pinned and defeated, frantically waves a white flag. Upon seeing this official request, Eugene's expression hardens, and he instantly springs into action. He leaps into the arena, landing with purpose between the colossal boss and the fallen knights. He stands as a new, defiant challenger. He shouts a warning for Somaya to stay back, as the monster lets out a deafening, furious roar. Amidst the carnage of the defeated party, Eugene stands his ground, his face a mask of grim determination. He stands firm as the colossal floor boss lets out a furious roar, its attention now fixed solely on him. From a safe distance, Somaya watches with wide, fearful eyes, her voice a strained whisper as she utters his name. Despite the monster's overwhelming presence, he remains resolute, a lone figure amidst the wreckage and the fallen knights. Somaya can only stare in disbelief, thinking there is no way he can win. His voice cuts through the tension, sharp and commanding, as he orders everyone to move out of the floor boss's territory. The knight he addresses, acknowledging the acknowledged rescue request, apologizes for their failure, and urges his comrades to flee quickly. As the surviving knights scramble to safety, he stands his ground, positioning himself as the sole barrier between them and the enraged beast. The monster lets out another deafening roar, but then abruptly stops, its gaze locked onto the single warrior who dares to confront it. He meets its stare with a calm expression, a clear realization forming in his mind. He cannot defeat this floor boss. As the thought solidifies, the creature's massive fist begins its descent. But even if he cannot win, he resolves that he will not lose either. He raises a hand and invokes a spell, Barrier Magic, Shield of Light, conjuring a vast, glowing shield of energy before him. The colossal fist plummets toward the barrier, its sheer size dwarfing the lone defender as it closes in for the devastating impact. The shield holds against the immense pressure. With gritted teeth, he pours his energy into the barrier, determined to hold on just a bit longer while the knights watch the incredible standoff from safe distance. With a final, violent surge, the boss's fist slams into the radiant shield, creating a deafening thud and a blinding flash of light at the point of collision. He holds his ground as the immense force of the boss's strike reverberates through the air. Samire watches with wide eyes, while the retreating knights look back, one of them murmuring in amazement at the display of power. The creature's massive club, which had been descending with unstoppable force, grinds to a halt just inches from its target, stopped completely by the shimmering barrier. It lets out a low growl of frustration, its attack thwarted. From behind the shield, Eugene maintains his composure, his focus unwavering as the barrier holds firm against the brute's strength. The colossal monster stands momentarily stunned, its attack having failed to break through the defense. It seems to pause, perhaps exhausted from sheer effort. From a distance, the scene is clear. Eugene stands alone, a single figure holding back the immense threat, creating a safe path for the knights to retreat. Having reached a safe distance, the knights express their disbelief. One questions if what they witnessed was even possible, while another, incredulous, suggests that the monster must have simply exhausted itself and stopped its own attack. With the immediate danger averted, Samire rushes to Eugene's side, her face alight with admiration as she exclaims how amazing he was. He, however, downplays his actions, stating that he merely bought time for everyone to escape and asks if she is hurt. She confirms that she is fine, but her sentence trails off with a but, her gaze filled with concern for him instead. Nearby, two of the knights he saved approach. One offers his sincere thanks, while the other adds his own praise, amazed that Eugene accomplished such a feat on his own. As they speak, Eugene suddenly flinches, letting out a small cry of pain, revealing that his effort was not without its cost. He ignores the lingering pain from his previous spell, turning his attention to the wounded. A brilliant light envelopes the knights as he casts great healing, mending their injuries in an instant, leaving them stunned. As the knights express their profound gratitude, amazed that he would heal them, Samire steps forward, offering to tend to the others' wounds as well. Internally, she marvels at how amazing Eugene is. After ensuring everyone has been treated, he surveys the group with a sense of relief. He acknowledges to himself that the situation had been dangerous, as the now recovering knights offer their thanks from a distance. In a relative calm that follows, Eugene speaks with Samire. He laments that, in the end, they found no clues about her memories. Samire agrees, noting that she also had to witness something terrifying, but then adds that perhaps it was good for her to experience it early on. As the battered party of knights begins to depart, Eugene calls out, asking them to wait. He then turns to Samire, suggesting they call it a day, and she quietly agrees. They turn back towards him. The bald knight leading the group approaches Eugene and Samire, asking if Eugene would lend them his power. Samire looks on, seemingly questioning the request herself. The knight continues, acknowledging the splendid battle Eugene had just fought. He admits that Eugene's power is equivalent to that of 100 men and that, with their own skills, it seems impossible for them to defeat the floor boss. His plea becomes more direct and desperate as he formally asks Eugene to help them defeat the floor boss. The knight adds that he's glad for the sentiment, but his tone is heavy. Eugene listens in silence, a bead of sweat on his temple revealing his own tension. He then suggests a new strategy, that they challenge the boss together, combining their standing forces with Eugene's might. Eugene, however, respectfully advises against this. He tells the knights they should withdraw for the day, suggesting it would be wiser to hire more skilled help for a later attempt. The knight clenches his fist, declaring they cannot do that. He reveals the dire stakes. They need money and must succeed in this subjugation to bring back treasure, otherwise their country will be ruined. They came bearing the weight of their nation and cannot return empty-handed to their king and people. The confession makes Eugene and Samire understand the source of his earlier frustration. He processes this, his expression thoughtful. He briefly considers using Samire's power but dismisses the thought, knowing her earlier exertion would make it too difficult. Turning to her, he asks to be excused for a moment. As the knights begin to walk away, Eugene steps forward and firmly grabs the lead knight's arm, stopping him in his tracks. He turns his attention to Samire, and as he does, a soft, sparkling light begins to emanate from her. Startled, She looks at her own hands and wonders what is happening. He explains that he needs to borrow a bit of her magical power. Taking her hand, he tells her to simply stay as she is. Surrounded by the ethereal glow, Samire hesitantly agrees. He calls the technique magic link, a method used to share magical power with another person. His thoughts drift to the past, recalling his many attempts to use this technique with various partners. Each time, his own innate white magic power had canceled out the received energy, meaning he had never once succeeded. However, he senses this time is different. With Sumire's vast, red magic power, a unique trait of the Flame God clan, a successful link seems possible. Sumire stands enveloped in this potent, fiery energy. A surge of energy flows into him, causing his body to grow hot. Wisps of red power curl around his form as he wonders for a moment if he has drawn too much. She watches him, tilting her head with a look of innocent confusion as she observes the change taking place. He looks down at their joined hands, a faint smile touching his lips as he lets out a breath. He thanks Samire, who shyly affirms. Her expression shifts to one of quiet concern as she continues to watch him, sensing his newfound resolve. He turns away from her, his fist clenching. Spotting a sword lying on the ground, he reaches for it, announcing he will borrow it for a bit. He internally muses on how long it has been since he last held a sword in battle. He channels his own power into the simple sword, casting a form of barrier magic known as material enhancement. The blade begins to glow with a brilliant light. The steel hums as the magic settles, its surface gleaming with contained energy. He pauses, reflecting on his usual limits. Ordinarily, this is as far as his own power can take him, an enhancement insufficient for a direct attack. But this time is different. Suddenly, the red magic he borrowed from Samire erupts, engulfing the blade in roaring flames. It has become a magic sword, a true flame blade. A nearby knight stares, stunned by the transformation. The other knights look on in shock, one of them noting that the seemingly weak sword from moments ago is now something else entirely. He confirms the success internally. Even after adding his own white magic, the light remains red and its strength is unchanged. The powers did not cancel each other out. With a surge of confidence, he realizes that with this, he can fight. His resolve solidified, he strides past the dumbfounded knights, heading toward the front line. As he passes, the bald knight calls out urgently, declaring that he'll accept the request Eugene made earlier. He pauses, glancing back over his shoulder as the knight specifies the request, to assist in the subjugation. The knight then makes a surprising offer. In return for his assistance, he will give Eugene all of the subjugation rewards. In response to the knight's offer, Eugene clarifies his intentions. He wants to test the limits of his new magic sword. Samire watches him, her hands clasped anxiously, as he makes a firm request, to be allowed to fight alone. He then steps forward, his gaze locked on the hulking monster before him. With his sword held ready, he announces his name, Eugene Santafield, and formally declares a challenge to the 10th floor's boss. The creature lets out a low growl, acknowledging the confrontation. On a vast, barren plateau under a clear sky, Samire watches with a worried expression as Eugene Santafield stands alone, facing the colossal, stone-like form of the 10th floor's boss. She quietly murmurs his name, her hands clasped before her. A formal declaration echoes across the expanse. Eugene Santafield's challenge has been accepted. He glances back slightly, his expression calm as he wishes Samire the best of luck before turning his full attention to the looming giant. In response, the monstrous boss raises its enormous hand, a craggy appendage larger than a building, and brings it crashing down toward the lone swordsman. As the shadow of the descending fist falls upon him, Eugene stands his ground, sword in hand. He grips the hilt, a fleeting thought crossing his mind. He wonders when the last time was that he wielded a real sword. His mind drifts to his past. Even after giving up the path of a magic swordsman due to his divine blessing of talent, he never neglected his sword training. From a young age, his father had hammered sword techniques into him, and this practice became a habit. He recalls the name of the swordsmanship passed down through the Santafield family, the two-heaven circle flow. The giant's fist smashes into the ground with a guttural roar, but Eugene has already dodged aside. From a safe distance, Samire and a knight watch in terror, with Samire crying out his name. Eugene, however, feels a sense of purpose, realizing he can finally put his training to use with a magic sword. As the attack continues, he raises a hand and casts a spell, shouting its name. Barrier magic, shield of light. A translucent dome of energy materializes, intercepting the colossal fist and stopping its momentum. The shield holds firm against the immense force. With the attack thwarted, Eugene leaps backward, landing nimbly on his feet as Samire watches, her expression a mixture of relief and astonishment. The impact throws up a towering wall of shattered earth and rock. A nearby knight urgently yells at Samire to get away as the party of explorers scrambles to retreat from the shockwave. The same knight turns to her, advising that she should also leave the boss domain soon. Samire looks back at him, utterly perplexed. Boss domain? She asks, revealing her ignorance of the term. The knight seems taken aback by her question. She listens as the knight explains the glowing white line on the ground. It marks the boss domain, an area where the colossal creature will focus its attacks. He assures her that they are safe from direct assault outside the line, but warns that unforeseen hits won't be covered. The girl understands immediately. Not only is it dangerous to remain so close, but their presence also interferes with Eugene's fight. Despite her concern, she can only watch, whispering his name. On the battlefield, Eugene faces the monster, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword, steeling himself to remain calm. He reminds himself that he must not get carried away simply because he can wield the sword again. His resolve is tested immediately as the boss lets out a deafening roar and brings its enormous fist crashing down. He knows he must finish this quickly, before any more injuries occur. He leaps into action, employing the Santafield family's two-heaven circle flow. With a burst of wind-style skywalk, he dodges the crushing blow, leaving the monster to grunt in surprise as its fist meets only empty ground. Before the creature can recover, he lands gracefully and drives his blade deep into its massive leg. The sword slices clean through flesh and bone, severing the limb at the knee. As the monstrous leg topples, he exhales sharply. The boss shrieks in agony. Eugene takes a moment to assess the situation. He acknowledges that he's fighting well, but the last strike consumed a significant amount of his magical power. He calculates that he has just enough left for one final hit. Enraged and in pain, the creature ignores its injury and raises its remaining foot, intending to crush him. Seeing his opening, he decides to end it. He channels his remaining power into his family's technique, unleashing the two-heaven circle flow, fire style, lion slash. The fiery blade arcs through the air, carving a devastating path across the monster's torso. His final, decisive blow connects. The colossal boss lets out a final, agonized roar as its massive body crashes to the ground, shaking the floor of the dungeon. Eugene and his companions watch as the threat is finally neutralized. As the creature lies motionless, a formal announcement materializes in the air, declaring that the explorer Eugene has defeated the floor boss. Summaries and the nearby knight stare in stunned silence, processing the incredible feat. He can only stare, a wave of amazement washing over him. Until this very moment, such a victory felt impossible. He reflects on his past. His swordsmanship skills were always highly praised, but his innate white magic, which nullified the abilities of others, made him an outcast. He wonders if simply being able to use magic swords is truly enough to fight effectively alongside others now. His thoughts are suddenly interrupted as Summaries throws her arms around him from behind, her voice filled with pure admiration. "Amazing," she exclaims. "You're incredible." She beams, congratulating him once more on winning against the floor's boss. Flustered but appreciative, Eugene thanks her, acknowledging that it was thanks to her power. Summaries then offers a quick, bashful apology for her outburst. He then turns his attention to his sword, observing that the red magic power Summaries had shared with him has almost completely faded from blade. He makes a quick mental calculation. With the amount of magic used for the magic link, the enchantment on his sword only lasts for 2 strikes. He glances over at the other explorers. He understands that his greatest challenge moving forward will be to figure out how to fight effectively using an amount of magic that doesn't place a heavy burden on Summaries. The knights, who have been forced to watch from outside the boss's domain, can only stare in collective, bewildered silence at the unbelievable outcome. On the barren landscape of the 10th floor, the bald knight addresses Eugene, expressing immense gratitude. He offers all the materials and precious treasures from the defeated floor boss, stating it's the least they can do for the rescue and subjugation. Eugene seems hesitant, asking if it's truly all right to accept. The knight insists, confirming that they have no need for the items and wishes to express his gratitude. Before he can continue, Summaries interjects with a gentle smile. She states that she is perfectly satisfied, as she was already given the borrowed sword. With the matter settled, Eugene and Summaries turn and walk away, heading toward the stone archway. The knight waves them off with a final word of thanks. They step into a transport chamber, and as the door slides shut, Summaries lets out a quiet, happy chuckle. Particles of light begin to swirl around them, signaling their ascent. She hums contentedly, remarking that doing good things feels nice. Her simple joy causes Eugene to ponder. He reflects that being soft-hearted isn't necessarily a bad thing, but for an explorer, it could be a liability. The thought triggers a memory from his past. The scene shifts to a young, breathless Eugene during his training. A man, his father, stands before him, imparting a core tenet. The Santafield family does not wield their swords for their own sake, but for the sake of others. The boy asks why. His father explains that their family has served their lord for generations, and protecting him is both their duty and their joy. He clarifies that this is the family creed, but there's a deeper reason he wields his sword. Confused, young Eugene questions the idea of a sword for smiles. His father smiles, explaining that a sword wielded for others brings smiles to people, and seeing those smiles, in turn, brightens their own spirits. Back in the present, standing in the ascending transport, Eugene's expression hardens with quiet conviction. He affirms his father's words to himself, understanding their truth completely. That's right. He stands silently, his back to Summaries, lost in a profound realization. The path of the sword, a source of great turmoil that he had nearly forgotten, now felt clear. Summaries watches him, her expression filled with a silent, questioning concern. Her voice gently breaks his reverie. He turns, his previous solemnity replaced by a warm, bright smile. He assures her that he is not troubled. On the contrary, this newfound clarity is a wonderful feeling. The scene shifts to the Lyceum Magic Academy's student council room. As Samire peers inside, her gaze fixes on an unfamiliar woman seated within. A sense of unease crosses her face as she wonders about the identity of this imposing figure. Seated at a grand desk, the woman's eyes narrow with a chilling intensity. The thought of another girl being so close to her Eugene ignites a cold, possessive fury within her. She makes a silent, venomous promise. She will never forgive Samire. Inside a well-appointed room, Eugene and Ellie celebrate his recent victory. Raising her glass, Ellie congratulates him on defeating the floor boss, encouraging him to continue progressing as it's a fine way to pass the time. Eugene, holding his own glass, replies with a weary expression that it's easy for her to say. He takes a sip, his thoughts drifting to Samire. He acknowledges to himself that he only won against the boss thanks to the power he borrowed from her, and even that power has its limits. Ellie observes him quietly, breaking the silence. Ellie remarks that he seems to have gotten quite close with Samire. Eugene looks back at her and clarifies his position, stating simply that he is her guardian. Her observation is met with a dismissive sound from Ellie, who turns away. She thinks to herself that while it's none of her business who Eugene spends time with, she doesn't find him calling another girl by her first name very amusing. Eugene, oblivious to her thoughts, seems puzzled. He reasons that it simply means Samire is getting used to this world, adding that it's not as if he's as close to her as he is to Ellie. Hearing his innocent explanation, Ellie's expression softens into surprise. With an exasperated sigh, she cautions him against saying things that could be so easily misunderstood, thinking to herself that he has an unconscious talent for winning people over. In the next moment, she leans in, tilting his chin up towards her. With a playful but firm tone, she declares that Eugene belongs to her, leaving him startled by her sudden possessiveness. The next day, Eugene and Samire resume their tour of the school grounds. Samire confirms that this is the continuation of the tour that was previously interrupted. She glances at him, a hint of concern on her face as she wonders if he is sleep-deprived. As they walk, Eugene gestures towards a grand, multi-story building, explaining that the entire structure is the student council room. Samire gasps in astonishment, unable to believe the whole building is dedicated to it. He confirms, stating it's a measure of how prestigious the council is. Just as they stand before the entrance, a sharp voice calls out, "Eugene." The student council president stands in the doorway. Meanwhile, Samire thinks to herself that she's happy to be able to tour the school with him again, even if it's an unexpected chore, and her eyes drift to a nearby consultation counter. The student council president lunges forward, wrapping her arms around a startled Eugene. Her thoughts are filled with joy, believing he has finally come to see her. Caught completely by surprise, Eugene shouts her name, "Sarah." Nearby, Samire can only stare in wide-eyed confusion, wondering who this newcomer is. He tries to calm the situation, telling Sarah he's currently giving Samire a tour and that they can talk later. Sarah's attention then snaps to Samire, her gaze sharp with recognition. She asks if Samire is the one who was reincarnated from another world. A flustered Samire confirms this and introduces herself as Samire Sashioji. Having confirmed her identity, Sarah stands back and formally introduces herself with an air of grace and authority. She announces that she is Sarah, a candidate for the title of Saint of the Holy Kingdom of Cardia, as well as the student council president of the school. She then turns her intense gaze upon Samire, making a pointed declaration. She is Eugene's former partner. The word hangs in the air, causing Samire to audibly question it while Eugene looks away, completely flustered. Before they can process this, Sarah elaborates on their shared history. She explains that she and Eugene formed a party and even tackled the final labyrinth together, though their partnership only lasted for about half a year after they first enrolled. As Samire quietly takes this in, Eugene feels compelled to explain further. He recounts that, back then, Sarah was a priestess who wasn't very skilled with healing magic. However, her talents have since blossomed, and she now wields the holy sword as one of the school's top holy knights. Samire looks down at what appears to be Eugene's old progress record. A wave of understanding washes over her as she realizes this history is why their party was disbanded, murmuring that she didn't truly want it to end. Her quiet words catch Sarah's attention. Sarah explains that she had to make that difficult choice back then, disbanding the party specifically to protect Eugene from the intense jealousy of other students. With her past actions justified, Sarah's resolve hardens. She grabs Eugene's arm and makes a demand. They should start over and form a party again, but this time with her, not Samire. Samire, shocked, immediately protests that such a thing would be a problem. Her protest goes unheeded. Samire is left stunned and speechless as Sarah, her expression fixed and determined, turns and walks away. Her back still turned, Sarah offers a curt apology to Samire, who is left stunned and speechless, realizing she has been completely ignored. Samire can only stammer Sarah's name in confusion. Ignoring the girl's shock, she turns her attention to Eugene, stating she has something important to discuss and coolly demanding that Sumire be quiet. She then looks to Eugene for confirmation, leaving Sumire looking small and dismissed. Before Eugene can respond, Sumire, her face flushed with indignation, steps forward. She challenges Sarah directly, demanding to know why she has to be so harsh. Her voice rises with newfound confidence as she declares that the former partner should be the one to stay quiet. Sumire firmly asserts her own place, proclaiming that she is Eugene's current partner. In response to this defiance, a slow, confident smirk spreads across Sarah's face. She looks at Sumire with a flicker of interest and concedes that her point was well said. Her amusement quickly solidifies into a challenge. She proposes a match to definitively prove which of them is more suitable to be Eugene's partner, leaving him looking flustered and trapped between them. The confrontation immediately moves to the Lyceum Magic Academy's training grounds. Sarah stands before the other two and lays out the simple rules. Whoever destroys more targets before the sand in an hourglass runs out, wins. Sumire nods, accepting the terms. With the rules established, Sarah declares that she will go first. In a flash of brilliant light, she summons her weapon into her outstretched hand. The Holy Sword, Sword of Mercy, Kurtana. Wielding the holy blade, she unleashes its power without hesitation. A volley of crystalline swords of light erupts from her, streaking towards the floating practice targets high in the sky. As her attack flies true, she calmly informs Sumire that the targets will regenerate and the hourglass will reset for her turn. With that, the timer is flipped and the sand begins to fall, marking the start of her attempt. Her display of power concludes, and an observer notes with shock that all targets were destroyed in an instant, a result even faster than Sarah herself seemed to anticipate. This incredible performance fills Sumire with dread. She recalls impulsively agreeing to the match, but now, faced with Sarah's skill, she questions if she can possibly surpass it. Her anxiety hardens into resolve. She knows that if she loses here, her chance to be with Eugene will be gone forever. Clenching her small fist, she vows that she absolutely cannot lose. As her turn begins, however, magic erupts violently around her. Sumire realizes with dawning horror that the flames are acting on their own, and she has no idea how to stop them. Panic flashes in her eyes as she recognizes the sensation. She fears that if this continues, it will be a repeat of the last time she lost control. Her terror manifests as a colossal pillar of fire bursts forth, threatening the entire training ground. She screams internally, convinced she will burn everything again as Eugene shouts her name in alarm. Watching the inferno, Sarah's sharp gaze identifies the nature of the uncontrolled power. She recognizes it as Holy Sword Magic, a light blade, the same type as her own Sword of Mercy, Kurtana. In an instant, Eugene closes the distance, grabbing Sumire's shoulders to ground her. He speaks firmly, urging her to calm down and assuring her that if she does, she will be able to control the magic. His voice breaks through her panic. The raging pillar of fire dissipates into harmless wisps of smoke. As he holds her gently, Eugene apologizes for letting things get to this point. He offers a reassuring smile, telling her not to worry. He promises that from now on, they will train together to control her magic. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Sumire can only whisper his name. Overwhelmed with gratitude, Sumire thanks Eugene profusely for not only helping her, but also agreeing to train her. As she speaks, Sarah steps forward with a huff, announcing that she will help with the training as well, much to Sumire's surprise. Sarah then explains her offer with a gentle expression, claiming she simply wants to reduce Eugene's burden. Seeing this, Sumire begins to think that Sarah might actually be a good person. The sentiment is short-lived, as Sarah turns away and shouts that her real motive is to ensure their future match is a fair one. Her declaration made, Sarah moves closer to Eugene, her mind filled with the happy thought of getting to spend more time with him. Witnessing this blatant display, Sumire's brief positive impression shatters. She realizes instantly that Sarah is not a good person at all. Her face cast in a dark, possessive shadow, Sumire immediately turns to Eugene. She proposes that the two of them devise a training regimen together after this, and perhaps get dinner afterward, pointedly excluding Sarah. Caught off guard by the sudden tension, Eugene can only call out Sarah's name. Eugene recalls that Sarah, the student council president, had wanted to accompany them on their dungeon expedition. However, she is completely swamped with her duties, reviewing stacks of approval documents and other requests. He muses that being the president seems like a very tough job. Following some special training with Sarah, Eugene and Sumire decide to once again challenge the dungeon. Sumire enthusiastically declares she is fine with it. Eugene explains that from now on, they will fight together, but he will need to borrow her red mana in combat. He also warns her that more dangerous monsters have reportedly started appearing on the 11th floor. Just as he finishes his warning, Sumire spots monsters in the distance. Eugene thinks to himself that it's a pain to have to periodically grant mana to a weapon, wishing he had a sword that could use magic from the very beginning. He elaborates on this thought for Sumire, explaining the issue with magic swords of permanent enchantment, sometimes called holy swords. While some prefer such high-end items, he cannot use them. His own white mana is so powerful that it cancels out the permanent enchantment, rendering the swords useless in his hands. Samire gasps, surprised by this fact. He adds that he doesn't have fond memories of them anyway, triggering a flashback. He remembers his father telling him not to worry and offering him a precious magic sword from his collection. His father believed he should be able to fight with it, even with only white mana. Though young Eugene was thrilled, the memory concludes with a sad look on his father's face that he'll never forget. Pulled from his reverie, he faces a puzzled Samire. She asks why it's okay for him to use her mana if his own cancels out enchantments. Eugene admits he doesn't know for sure, but he theorizes that the mana of an Ifrit like her must be special. He continues this line of thought, hypothesizing that Sumire's mana is likely a higher-order power than normal. He briefly considers if it could be spiritual or even divine energy, though he quickly dismisses the latter as improbable. His musings are abruptly cut short as a grotesque, goblin-like creature with a crude dagger bursts from the foliage, letting out a guttural shriek. Samire cries out, startled by the monsters. With a hardened expression, Eugene immediately identifies the threat, goblins. He quickly explains that these creatures hunt in packs. He warns Samire that although they are small, they will be surrounded in no time if they let their guard down. He resolves to take them all out before they can call for backup. He looks at Samire, his expression somber as he processes her question about the goblins. Taking them out, he repeats, then clarifies the grim implication. Does that mean killing them? He concedes that she is right about the situation. She glances back, asking if they can't simply incapacitate the goblins as they did before, questioning if that wouldn't be sufficient. Her question makes him realize the vast difference in their perspectives. He recalls that monsters don't exist in Samire's world, so what is normal for him is a terrifying concept for her. The thought of taking a life causes Samire to tremble, her face pale with fear. He inwardly admits his own lack of consideration. They haven't had a truly serious fight until now, and she has been so focused on controlling her power that she likely hadn't contemplated the lethal reality of their work. Deciding to address the issue directly, he turns to her with a firm expression. If that's the case, now is the time to decide, he states, his gaze intense. Samire, do you have the resolve to take a monster's life? The blunt question startles her. He continues, leaving no room for misunderstanding. Exploring the dungeon means subjugating monsters. In other words, taking their lives. Samire listens, her eyes wide as the full weight of his words sinks in. He explains the grim logic behind his stance. If you only injure them half-heartedly, there's a chance they'll retaliate. Once a fight begins, you absolutely have to finish them off. His gaze remains fixed on her as he poses the final question. Even knowing that, Samire, can you move forward? As he speaks, he notices more goblins emerging from hiding in the foliage. Samire's face is a mask of inner turmoil. Her hesitation vanishes in an instant. With newfound determination hardening her features, she takes a decisive step forward, moving past him and raising her shield in readiness. She plants her feet firmly beside him, creating a defensive line. Together, they stand back to back, bracing themselves as the full horde of goblins charges toward them. He stands firm before the goblin horde, turning his head slightly to address the girl beside him. Listen, Samire, he says, his voice steady despite the monstrous snarls filling the air. He continues, laying out the grim reality of their path. He reminds her that her goal is to regain her memories, and to achieve that, taking lives is unavoidable. Yet he offers her an out, stating plainly, but if you absolutely can't do it, I won't force you. Her eyes widen as she absorbs his words, the weight of the choice settling upon her. He meets her gaze, his own expression serious and unwavering, and promises, I will respect your decision, Samire. With a soft, determined sound, she turns away. A fleeting image flashes in her mind, her own helpless, naked form from when he first found her. The memory of that vulnerability steals her resolve. She pivots back and grabs his arm with surprising force. Eugene-kun, she begins, her voice trembling not with fear, but with conviction. I want to get my memories back, because I hate feeling like something's missing. A confident smile spreads across his face. All right, I'm leaving those to you, he declares. Okay, she responds instantly. As they agree, a pulse of energy connects them, a skill activating between them. Mana link. With their power joined, he surges forward, his sword flashing as he carves a path into the goblin horde. He glances back, his expression urgent as he shouts her name, Samire. His charge successfully draws the aggression of the monsters, pulling them into a chaotic fray around him and creating a vital opening. Seizing the moment he created, Samire's face sets in fierce concentration. I will, she vows, gathering magical energy. Forward, move, she commands, the power coalescing around her. In response to her command, she unleashes the spell, Firestorm. A colossal pillar of flame erupts from the ground, engulfing the goblin horde in a roaring inferno. Her spell erupts into a high-level conflagration, incinerating the goblins in an instant. Eugene watches in disbelief, realizing she has cast a complex magic formula he has not yet taught her, as the creatures turn to ash with silent screams. He recognizes that the sheer power of the attack is on par with that of a court wizard, a stunning display from someone so inexperienced. As the last of the magical fire dies down, It reveals Sumire standing resolute and unharmed amidst the devastation, her expression firm. He processes what he has just witnessed, concluding that Sumire must have activated this power unconsciously. The mana of the Ifrit within her is truly unfathomable. He notes with relief that there is no risk of a forest fire, allowing them to continue their exploration as she begins to walk forward. But before they can proceed, Eugene is taken aback as Sumire kneels before the charred remains of the goblins, her hands clasped in a silent prayer for the fallen. He calls out her name, reflecting that her compassion might be a good quality. Internally, however, he reminds himself that in their line of work, it is better not to show such mercy. Pushing his reservations aside, he approaches her. He congratulates her on her first subjugation, and she looks up, softly affirming his words. Her soft agreement gives way to a bright, confident smile, which then quickly fades into a more thoughtful, determined expression. With their first major battle behind them, the pair ventures deeper into the woods. Eugene notes their progress, remarking that they have taken down quite a few foes, when a sudden noise from behind catches his attention. The sound was a loud growl from Sumire's stomach. She flinches in embarrassment, admitting that something nearby smells delicious. She readily agreed with Eugene's suggestion to call a day. He noted that it was getting dark and proposed they find some dinner. As they continued, Eugene's gaze fixed on a towering structure in the distance. There it is, he announced, identifying it as the dungeon elevator. Sumire, meanwhile, looked around the area, her cheeks flushed. Her search led her eyes to an unexpected sight. A young woman bathing in a makeshift tub, the water splashing around her as she was startled by their presence. Both Eugene and Sumire froze, staring in stunned silence at the bather. The woman, equally taken aback by the intrusion, could only manage a confused sound of surprise. Inside a makeshift wooden tub, Sumire expresses her disbelief. She questions the absurdity of taking a bath while they are still inside a dungeon. The woman bathing with her, however, seems confident that their current activity might just work. The woman continues, suggesting that since it involves the biology club's handyman and the headmaster's favorite, Eugene Santafield, there's no issue. This only deepens Sumire's confusion as she wonders aloud what a biology club, or a handyman, even is. Their bathing is interrupted by a new, cheerful voice. A young woman with her hair in a high ponytail appears, apologizing for startling them. She introduces herself as Leona Bianchi, a member of the Lyceum Magic Academy's martial arts club, noting that she hadn't expected to find anyone here. Sumire recognizes that she is from the same academy. Leona's face lights up with recognition. She excitedly confirms Sumire's identity as Sumire Sashioji, the one who came from another world. Sumire timidly affirms this, as Eugene looks on from nearby. As an apology for the earlier surprise, Leona winks and extends an invitation for them to join her group for dinner at their camp. The sudden offer leaves both Eugene and Sumire taken aback. The scene shifts to the Lyceum Magic Academy Martial Arts Club's campsite. Under the evening sky, several students are gathered around a large campfire, with tents pitched nearby. At the camp, Leona explains to a fellow club member that she brought the newcomers along because Sumire had been so insistent, leaving her unable to refuse. The other student remarks on Leona's friendliness. A large, steaming bowl of stew is presented. Sumire gazes at it, recognizing the delicious and nostalgic aroma she had smelled earlier. Leona encourages them to eat before it gets cold, and Sumire offers her thanks. After thanking them for the food, Sumire takes her first spoonful of the stew, chewing thoughtfully. Her eyes fly open with sudden realization. She knows this flavor. As she exclaims this, Leona explains that the dish is called curry, and it was popularized long ago by another person who was a reincarnation from another world. Eugene tastes it as well, agreeing that it's delicious, as Sumire clutches her bowl, stunned by the connection to her past. Her mind reeled with the realization that she was holding food from her original world. When Eugene asked if she had eaten the same thing, she could only manage a quiet confirmation, her eyes wide with wonder. She took a bite, and a gentle smile bloomed on her face. She admitted to Eugene that while it didn't trigger any specific memories, the simple taste brought her a profound sense of happiness. He watched her, a quiet understanding in his gaze. As she continued to eat, savoring the moment, a voice called out her name, Sumire. It was Leona, who approached with a cheerful expression, stating she had something to ask about Sumire's memories. Sumire responded with renewed determination, agreeing that they should do their best to clear the dungeon so she could recover what she had lost. Later, by the warmth of the campfire, she turned to Eugene with a question, asking if the two of them were truly going to join the club's camp. He acknowledged that this was the plan, but then turned his attention to the larger group. He questioned Leona, asking if it was truly acceptable to invite outsiders while her group was in the middle of a dungeon-clearing mission. Leona's demeanor grew serious. She explained that while their ultimate goal was to clear the 20th floor, a worrisome rumor was circulating. Sumire, concerned, repeated the word back to her. She elaborated on the rumor. The difficulty of the floor bosses in the Tower of Babel had been increasing lately. She pointed to the ogre Eugene had defeated on the 10th floor as a prime example, noting a monster of its strength was unheard of before the 30th floor. Another student admitted he hadn't realized how unusual it was, as it was his first time. Leona mused that their large group should be sufficient, but her expression remained clouded with doubt. Sensing Summary's confusion, Eugene turned to her. He apologized for not explaining sooner and clarified that they were with the third-string clearing squad of the martial arts club. He continued, explaining that the Lyceum Magic Academy hosts all sorts of clubs. For the combat-oriented ones, like the martial arts club, clearing dungeons is a primary activity. He listened as Sumire processed the information, reasoning aloud that if the martial arts club had some of the most skilled people in the academy, then there was little to worry about. She also correctly guessed that the biology club they'd encountered earlier was a similar organization. In response, Leona quickly clarified their position. She explained that unlike the elite first string who aimed for the higher floors, they were the third string, a reserve unit whose main purpose was to gain experience on lower floors with new members. She then turned her full attention to Eugene, her expression growing earnest. Leona confessed that with his battle against the ogre lending credence to the rumors of stronger bosses, their group was anxious about taking on the next one alone. Believing their meeting to be fate, she clasped her hands and bowed her head, formally pleading for him to lend them his strength. Sometime later, at a large, open-air bath, Leona's triumphant cheer cut through the steamy air. It was clear Eugene had agreed to their request. As she celebrated, another girl bathing nearby remarked to Sumire what a huge help it was to have both of them join. She added that Eugene himself had said their participation would also help him accomplish his own goals. Sumire listened, a thoughtful expression on her face. She was surprised, realizing this was the first time she had truly spoken with him. He was a genuinely nice person, so different from the rumors she had heard. Her companion elaborated on those rumors, recounting what was said about Eugene, that he was an unfriendly transfer student with a complicated past, a failure who could only use white magic despite his solid sword skills. She also noted that the headmaster had taken a special interest in him. Sumire recalled that the students who had picked a fight with him earlier had said something similar. The girl conceded that Eugene doesn't seem to make an effort to engage with people, but if one just talked to him, they would understand. Sumire, however, offered a different perspective, guessing that the rumors were simply born from jealousy. She asserted that he wasn't pretentious at all. He was sincere, and his skills were undeniably real. As she considered her own words, a new thought began to form in her mind. It was as if he was a bystander. Her companion, noticing her pensive state, agreed that she might be right. Her attention then shifted as she spotted Leona, commenting with amusement on how much their friend loved the magic open-air bath. Her thoughts remained on Eugene. He seemed reserved, or rather, it felt as though he lacked a strong sense of self. She had initially believed he was merely respecting her wishes out of his duty as her guardian, but now she wondered if that was truly the case. As she mulled this over, Leona's voice cut through her contemplation, calling out to her. The other girls, prompted by the conversation, asked Sumire about her world, but she politely declined, admitting she didn't remember much. Later that night, lying in her bed, she decided she shouldn't pry. If Eugene wasn't talking about his past, it was probably because he didn't want to. She tossed in her bed, feeling a pang of loneliness. Eugene was keeping his distance, acting like a bystander, just when she thought they were finally getting along. The worry and frustration mounted until she realized she was now far too worked up to sleep. With that restless energy, she resolved that if Eugene didn't want to talk, it was fine. She slipped out of her tent and into the cool night air. She walked through the quiet camp, thinking she might go sleep near Eugene's tent. But as she spotted it in the distance, she hesitated, stopping in her tracks. Her hesitation gave way to a firm decision. She wanted to know more about Eugene. As she stared towards the distant tent, a voice suddenly called her name from behind. It was Eugene. Startled, she spun around to find him standing right there, at the entrance of his own tent. Eugene, she breathed, completely taken by surprise. Her heart thumped loudly in her chest. A blush crept up her neck as she wondered how he could have possibly known she was standing right there. She was utterly flustered, stammering to herself, as she frantically tried to figure out what she should do now. Faced with the very person she so desperately wanted to understand, she found herself at a complete loss for words. There was so much she wanted to ask him, but all she could manage was a flustered, silent stammer. He calmly invites Sumire to come in. Flustered, she stands with her hands clasped, a blush on her cheeks. As she steps inside, a wave of panic washes over her. Her cheeks flush as she internally questions her own actions, realizing she has just entered his tent. Once inside, she remains frozen near the entrance while Eugene sits silently. The thought races through her mind that sneaking into a man's tent in the middle of the night is utterly shameless. Her internal monologue is cut short when Eugene speaks, telling her to wait a moment. Sumire flinches, her eyes wide with surprise. He then reveals that he had made some tea before bed and offers her a mug. Sumire quietly thanks him and takes a sip, the warmth of the drink doing little to cool her flushed cheeks. After a moment of her quiet sipping, Sumire hesitates. Seeing her reluctance, Eugene gently prompts her, asking if there was something she needed from him. Gathering her courage, she looks at him directly and makes her request clear. She wants him to tell her more about himself. Eugene seems taken aback, questioning if she really means him. She presses on, clarifying that anything would be fine. She suggests stories from his childhood, or perhaps what led him to first take up the sword. Her words send him into a memory. He murmurs, "When I was a kid," and a vision flashes through his mind. a younger version of himself, clad in a formal uniform, effortlessly slaying a large monster with a swift sword thrust. Sumire watches his distant expression, waiting for him to speak. As he is lost in a recollection, his intense gaze fixed on something only he can see, Sumire's voice cuts through the silence. She calls his name, her tone questioning, trying to bring him back to the present. He snaps back to the present, his attention returning to the tent. Noticing his distant expression, Sumire asks if he is all right. He places a mug down with a soft clink, confirming that he is. With a newfound resolve, he then agrees to tell her his story if she truly wants to hear it, much to her surprise. His gaze drifts slightly as he sits back, the weight of his past settling upon him. He warns her that it will be a long story. Sumire's expression is unwavering, her full attention fixed on him, ready to listen. Eugene recalls his past, remembering that he began attending the Glenflair Imperial Military Academy at the age of 6 due to his father's work. He overheard talk about a certain student, the son of the Emperor's right-hand man, the Imperial Sword, whose skill with the blade was said to be incredible. He continues his recollection, focusing on the one person he met there. As he stood in a grand hall of the academy, a voice called out to him. The voice belonged to Ailey alias Glenflair, the 7th Imperial Princess. Holding a practice sword towards him, she issued a bold and direct challenge. Fight me. A powerful downward swing of his sword sent the princess to the ground. As she fell, Eugene reflected on his own past, wondering why he had fought over 20 times before without ever managing to land a single hit. From the floor, she refused to yield, shouting for one more round. Eugene, however, reached out, suggesting to Princess Ailey that they should probably end things for the day. He remembers that it was his first time crossing swords with someone his own age. He had faced Ailey, who was ranked number 1 in their grade at the time, and had completely crushed her. Despite the decisive loss, he wasn't reprimanded as he had expected. Instead, Ailey, now calling him you, simply challenged him to another match. This became their new routine. Ailey started challenging him almost every day, always declaring that today would be the day she finally won. The constant duels began to wear on the young Eugene, who could only think, not again. While he excelled in combat, his academic performance was another matter. He admits his poor performance on a test, confessing that he's not good with academics. Ailey looks over his paper and asks if he has a makeup exam, a daunting prospect for Eugene, who could barely read or write at the time. She looks at him with quiet understanding. He concludes the memory by noting that keeping up with the advanced classes at the Imperial Military Academy was extremely difficult for him. He recalls Princess Ailey's boisterous command to hurry to the dueling grounds. When he expressed his confusion, she simply promised to teach him later. And so, their days fell into a pattern of mutual support. He taught her the techniques of the two-heaven circle flow, and in return, Ailey helped him with his academic studies. This exchange of skills quickly blossomed into a friendly but fierce rivalry. Before long, they were constantly competing for the top 2 spots in their grade, becoming inseparable companions. A few years passed. One day, under the grand archways of the academy, a more mature Ailey called out to him by his nickname, You. She approached him with a direct question, asking what he wanted to be in the future. The query seemed to catch him off guard, leaving him to ponder the future. He turned away, gazing out over the academy grounds. He admitted that the path of the sword was all he really had, guessing he would become a magic swordsman, just like his father. His thoughts drifted to his lineage, a family of swordsmen who had served a small country on the eastern continent for generations. Ailey recalled that his father, the renowned Imperial Sword, had originally been a mercenary, a fact Eugene quietly affirmed. He then recounted the full, tragic history. His country was destroyed in a great war just after his birth, a conflict that also claimed his mother's life. His father fled with the infant Eugene to the southern continent, making a living as a mercenary. One fateful day, he saved the crown prince from a dragon attack, and through that connection, he came to serve the empire as the emperor's right-hand man, the Imperial Sword. The core lesson his father imparted was to protect oneself with one's own strength. Recalling this principle, Eugene clenched his fist. He knew that was what his father, who had drilled swordsmanship into him, would say. But if possible, he wanted to become someone who could protect others, just like his father had. A new resolve hardened in his eyes as a path began to form in his mind. His memory drifts back to a promise made on a sunlit balcony. Princess Ailey, her expression earnest, had looked at him and asked if he would protect her too. Ailey's breath caught, her lips forming his name, as from a distance, his voice rang out, clear and resolute. I will protect Ailey. I'll protect you. He then added a condition that made her eyes widen in surprise. But only after I get much stronger. Later, on the day of the selection exam, she insisted he was already plenty strong. He disagreed, convinced he was not yet strong enough to protect her and needed more training. Ailey seemed to understand, but by that time, he had already firmly resolved to become her Imperial Sword. Around that time, they and the other students were reminded that the exam would decide their fates, and were admonished to never neglect their efforts, no matter the results. He recalled that while he and Ailey were not yet engaged, they were a couple with their parents' blessing. As the exam proceeded, an official called for the next candidate, then announced his name, Eugene Santafield. He stepped forward, answering with a firm yes. As he walked toward the ceremonial dais, he believed this was his moment. If he could just receive the talent to become a magic swordsman, it would be the first step toward becoming Ailey's imperial sword. Or so he thought. In a system where more colors signified greater power, the only talent he was granted was white magic. A crushing realization hit him. With a skill purely for healing and defense, there was no way he could ever become a magic swordsman. In the wake of his despair, a commotion erupted from the crowd. A cry went up, a rainbow appeared. His gaze snapped toward Ailey, who stood before her own result, a brilliant, multi-hued light. The crowd buzzed with awe. An official announcement confirmed it. Ailey had been granted the rainbow, the mark of the highest rank, proof of possessing 7 abilities. Eugene could only stare. His own world shattered as hers ascended to legendary status. He clung to a sliver of hope after the devastating results of the exam. He began to wonder if there was a way to fight on the battlefield with only white magic, and so he devoured every historical record he could find in the Academy's vast library. His research was driven by a single, desperate thought. Even if he only possessed healing and defense, he had to find a way to be able to protect Ailey. Within the confines of the fate that had been decided for him, he struggled desperately, poring over stacks of ancient tomes. He came to realize, however, that he was likely focusing on this impossible task to look away from the overwhelming gap between his own patheticness and Ailey's immense talent. In reality, he couldn't find any solution at all. Just then, as he stood in a hallway, Ailey's voice called out his name. The memory fades into the present moment. Ailey, standing before him, now alongside the student council president, Sarah, looks at him with a serious expression. She states that she thinks they should keep their distance from each other for a while. Her words leave him bewildered. He asks what she is saying, what hint he is supposed to be taking. Before Ailey can answer, Sarah steps in, her tone sharp and clinical. She explains that for a princess like Ailey, this is a crucial time for her future, and that it would be a nuisance to have a talentless person like him by her side. She continues, delivering another devastating piece of information. Besides his inadequacy, Ailey has also received a marriage proposal from the second prince of a major nation within the Federation. The twin revelations strike Eugene with the force of a physical blow. He turns his gaze back to Ailey, his voice trembling as he asks if what Sarah said is true. Ailey offers no verbal confirmation. Instead, she turns her head away, unable to meet his eyes, as Eugene stares in shocked silence. He recalls the moment of his resignation, his expression grim as he accepted the new reality. To Ailey, he had simply stated the facts before turning to leave. His recollection continues, detailing the immediate aftermath. The very next day, he dropped out of the military academy. Through his father's arrangements, he then enrolled in the Lyceum Magic Academy, the chain of events that brought him to the present. He finishes recounting this history to Sumire, who has been listening intently. With a slight shrug, he concludes that this explains everything up to now. Upon hearing the full story, Sumire's expression hardens with indignation. She looks up, her voice filled with fury as she declares that she cannot forgive Ailey for her actions. She insists that Ailey's behavior was simply too cruel. Eugene attempts to rationalize it, explaining that as a princess, Ailey's position comes with difficult obligations. Sumire concedes the point, but remains firm in her feelings. He watches her, a small smile forming as he acknowledges the truth in her anger. He realizes how directly she expresses her emotions, a stark contrast to his own tendency to suppress his feelings. Her indignation quickly transforms into a plan. Sumire recalls learning in class that setting a new record for the deepest floor reached in the final dungeon is a great honor. Eugene confirms it is the ultimate goal for all explorers on the southern continent, prompting her to propose they aim for it together. She frames this shared goal with their individual motivations. With bright, determined eyes, she declares she will do it to search for her memories, while he can do it to get back at Ailey, proving his own worth. Her suggestion gives him pause. The idea of getting back at Ailey is a perspective he had never considered, and he quietly mulls over the new concept. After a moment of reflection, a new resolve hardens his features. He realizes it has been a long time since he had a clear goal and is inspired to be more direct, like Sumire. A determined smile spreads across his face as he agrees, promising to do his best. His acceptance of her proposal was met with a radiant smile from Sumire. Her face lit up with pure joy as she agreed enthusiastically. Later, as they prepared to part ways near a camp, Leona Bianchi waved cheerfully at Eugene. She called out that she was looking forward to their next meeting and asked if he would be back in the morning. Beside him, Sumire appeared slightly flustered. At that time, however, none of them had any way of knowing what was to come. They were oblivious to the horror that loomed just a few days in their future. A brutal incident at the Tower of Babel. There, in a blood-soaked clearing, Leona would lie broken amidst the bodies of her comrades, while a monstrous, shadowy beast stood over the slaughter. Orcs. The sudden appearance of monsters prompts the party to action. As the fighters move to surround their foes, Leona Bianchi surges forward, a blur of motion as she deems her companions' reactions too slow. Her speed is impressive. Watching the battle unfold, Eugene notes the effective teamwork of the martial arts club as they dispatch the roaring orc. After the skirmish, he demonstrates his own value. As he heals an injured party member's arm with astonishing speed, Leona looks on, declaring him incredible. His healing prowess earns him high praise, with one member suggesting he should be the club's official healer. Eugene reflects on how he and Sumire ended up joining the third string of the martial arts club, deciding to aim for the 20th floor together. He finds that being relied upon isn't so bad after all. This newfound camaraderie proves effective. The exploration proceeds smoothly, with the club members displaying such strength that Eugene begins to doubt they are merely the third string. Even their goal of defeating the floor boss seems easily achievable. The positive atmosphere continues as the group interacts, their spirits high from their successful run. And so, as their journey progresses, Eugene observes Leona and Sumire chatting happily together. He feels a sense of relief, noting that Sumire has completely settled in with a new group. His moment of quiet satisfaction ends as the party arrives at their destination, a dark, ominous cave entrance marking the floor boss's area. As they stand before the entrance, Eugene's relaxed demeanor vanishes. His eyes widen with sudden, sharp focus, a stark contrast to Leona's confident readiness beside him. He has detected something from within the boss's area, a sound or presence that instantly puts him on high alert. He responds to Leona's question about the 20th floor with uncertainty, admitting he has a bad feeling about it. He continues, explaining that if he were exploring alone, he would turn back immediately. However, as part of a squad and an outsider, he acknowledges that he doesn't have the final say. His grave tone catches Sumire's attention, who worriedly asks what's wrong. Leona also observes him with a look of concern. After a moment of thought, Leona makes her decision, ordering the party to proceed, but with caution. A club member affirms her command. As they advance through the dense foliage, Leona suddenly halts and points ahead, announcing she has found their objective. She explains that the floor boss is supposed to be a goblin king, which should mean the area is teeming with goblins. Yet, as the party looks on, they find the clearing is completely empty. The reason for the silence becomes horrifyingly clear. The massive, bloodied corpse of the goblin king lies dead on the ground. The party stares in shock, and Eugene mutters in disbelief that it's already dead. The discovery prompts Eugene to take charge. He tells Leona that despite being a tag-along, they must retreat. Surprised, she questions him, but he explains that a boss's territory should have no other monsters of its kind. Convinced, Leona agrees, ordering the group to head back. As they begin to withdraw, a confused Sumire asks what the presence of a dead goblin boss implies. One of the other members seems to grasp the situation. Eugene clarifies the grim reality. On rare occasions, different floor bosses can spawn simultaneously and fight for dominance. The implication, he states, is that the floor boss is in the process of changing. He continues his explanation, warning that if a floor boss change occurs, an explorer might have to face two bosses at once. Sumire's face pales at the thought, understanding it's a situation to be avoided at all costs, regardless of one's skill. As they press on, Leona Bianchi observes that besides the Goblin King, the 20th floor usually hosts kobold or orc kings, all aggressive species. The current silence is unnatural. She concludes it's safe to assume an unexpected monster is present and orders everyone to head for the dungeon elevator. One of the party members grumbles about their efforts being for nothing, but Leona encourages them to press on. She adds that with Eugene and Sumire present, they can use a dew of revival if the worst happens. Hearing this, Sumire turns to Eugene, confused, and asks what a dew of revival is. He explains that it's a magical tool capable of resurrecting an explorer who has died inside the dungeon. However, its use is restricted to the 100th floor of the final dungeon and any floors below that. Sumire is shocked to learn that resurrection is even possible. He adds that there are conditions to its use. Despite the limitations, Sumire remains amazed that such a powerful item exists. Their conversation is cut short as a monstrous, three-headed beast looms before them, the Hound of Hades. The creature is devouring the remains of the Goblin King. Eugene's instincts scream at him not to fight this new, overwhelming threat. Reacting instantly to the immense danger, he shouts for everyone to run. He grabs Sumire, pulling her along as the party scatters in panic. As they flee, he glances back, his mind racing. He wonders why the Hound of Hades, a high-level beast, is on such a low floor. Suddenly, a deafening crack echoes through the area as the very ground beneath them begins to fracture. The tremor causes Sumire to lose her footing, and she cries out as she tumbles to the ground. Eugene shouts her name in alarm. Before he can reach her, a disembodied voice announces that the 100th floor trial of the gods will now commence. Both Eugene and Sumire stare into the space before them, their expressions frozen in disbelief and horror. He reacted instantly, shoving himself and Sumire away as a colossal paw crashed down where they had stood moments before. The ground shuddered from the force of the blow, sending them stumbling for cover. As they found a moment's respite, Sumire looked to him, her voice trembling as she asked about the system announcement and voiced her fear that they couldn't possibly fool the nose of the Hound of Hades. Eugene, however, was already acting. He cast a spell, barrier magic, concealment, assuring her it would hide them from sight before firmly telling her to be quiet. The concealment magic held, enveloping them in a shimmering, translucent diamond. But their relief was short-lived. A monstrous head, larger than a man, lowered itself to their level, its unblinking eye gazing just past their location as its nostrils flared, sniffing the air mere inches from the barrier's edge. Samire clamped a hand over her mouth in terror as Eugene watched, sweat beading on his face. Within a shimmering magical barrier, Eugene and Samire are momentarily safe. Outside, a colossal, three-headed canine beast materializes, its form shaking the very ground. Is the Hound of Hades? Trembling beside him, Samire asks what the creature is. With a grim expression, Eugene identifies it as a divine beast. He confirms that this must be the insane difficulty Leona had warned them about. He explains that a divine beast should only appear in the trial of the gods on the 100th floor or higher, not here. His mind races, questioning why a trial from the goddess herself would place such an anomaly on the 20th floor. A divine beast is on a completely different level, and he knows that in the last 100 years, no human has ever managed to defeat the Hound of Hades. As the ground rumbles beneath them, he grits his teeth in frustration, shouting his exasperation at the impossible situation. Before he can formulate a plan, a disembodied voice echoes through the chamber, announcing that the trial of the gods has concluded because all challengers have died. The two survivors stare in stunned silence, unable to believe what they've just heard. Samire whispers that it can't be true. Her shock gives way to a desperate hope. She turns to Eugene, remembering the prize for clearing the floor. She asks if the dew of revival can bring everyone back to life. He looks at her with a heavy expression. Samire, he begins, the dew of revival isn't all-powerful. Her face falls in confusion. He then explains its harsh limitations. It is ineffective unless used within 24 hours of death. Furthermore, there is a chance of severe aftereffects like memory loss. Worst of all, if one is unlucky, they could be revived missing a part of their own body. He confirms Samire's desperate hope that the others can be resurrected, but adds a grim condition. Only if they weren't devoured by a divine beast or a monster. The implication hangs heavy in the air, twisting Samire's expression with dawning horror. As she reels from the grim possibility, he pulls her into a comforting embrace, urging her to calm down. Trembling, Samire can only whisper the names of the fallen, Leona and the others, her voice thick with despair. A low rumbling begins to shake the ground around them. He holds her steady, attempting to offer a sliver of hope by explaining that just because the announcement declared them dead, it doesn't necessarily mean they were eaten by the beast. His words are cut short as a disembodied voice echoes throughout the area, addressing the new challengers within the territory. He looks up in disbelief, realizing the implication. He questions aloud why the trial of the gods is still continuing as a countdown materializes before him. 59. 58. The countdown continues relentlessly as the voice announces that only 1 minute remains in the trial. Alarmed, Samire clutches his sleeve, her voice tight with fear as she calls his name. Her plea is met with his hardened resolve. The disembodied voice then singles him out, commanding, "Prepare yourself, Eugene Santafield." Samire looks up at him, her grip tightening as she whispers his name in terror. He looks down at her, his decision made. He tells her to stay put, declaring that as her guardian, he will protect her by acting as the decoy. Samire immediately protests, calling the plan reckless, but he cuts her off, insisting she trust him and that he has a plan. She stares at him, her face a mask of panic and disbelief. But she stammers, unable to form a coherent argument against his sudden, dangerous declaration. He meets her panicked gaze not with grimness, but with a calm, confident smile. "Eugene," she whispers, before he makes a simple, yet profound request. "May I borrow some of your magic?" He initiates the connection, a brilliant magic link forming between him and Samire. Leaning down, he asks if she is okay. Samire, looking slightly overwhelmed by the influx of power, weakly confirms that she is. She looks up at him, her face flushed and her breathing slightly heavy from the unfamiliar sensation of their linked magic. Her expression shifts to one of earnest concern. Calling his name, Samire makes him promise that he will come back alive. His determined gaze softens, and a small, reassuring smile forms on his lips. He clasps her hand firmly, making a solemn vow. "I will," he promises. With the promise made, he turns and casts a spell, erecting a shimmering barrier of concealment around Samire to hide her from sight. Now alone, Eugene's mind races through the rules of the trial. He recalls that among the defeat conditions is a timeout, which, unlike other failures, is not fatal. Rumors suggest that when time runs out, the divine beast simply returns to its origin, giving challengers a chance to survive. However, he knows that stalling for time against such a creature is a different challenge altogether. He considers their situation. Simply hiding to wait for a timeout would have been futile, as they were deep in the beast's territory and would have been found eventually. Furthermore, he acknowledges the limits of his own power. He cannot fight effectively while simultaneously protecting Samire. His strategy becomes clear. He will draw the Hound of Hades to himself and buy time. As the final seconds tick away, 3, 2, 1, his resolve hardens. He will do whatever it takes. In that last moment, he makes his declaration, stating that he, Eugene Santafield, will challenge the trial of the gods. He realizes this is the best he can do right now. A formal announcement confirms his application has been accepted, wishing him the best of luck. He stands his ground, a lone figure before the towering, three-headed hound of Hades. The monstrous beast looms over him, its multiple jaws agape. With a determined gaze, he accepts his fate. There is no turning back now. The monstrous hound vanishes, the trial's landscape shifting around him. A voice calls his name. In response, Eugene draws a great sword, its blade shimmering with power. He glares forward, seeing a distant figure that looks like his past self, and roars his challenge. Come on. Facing the colossal, three-headed hound, Eugene steels his resolve. He understands that until the time limit for the trial of the gods expires, he must continue to fight, no matter the cost. He focuses his power, igniting his weapon as he invokes a spell, Magic Sword, Flame Blade. In response, the beast lets out a deafening roar and brings a massive paw crashing down. Standing his ground, Eugene prepares his defense, deciding his first move will be to parry the blow. As the claws descend, he executes a precise maneuver, two heaven circle flow, forest style, cat willow, deflecting the immense weight of the strike with his blade. The force of the impact sends him skidding backward. Grunting from the strain, he immediately casts a healing spell to mend any damage. Without pause, the beast strikes again. Eugene counters by conjuring a barrier magic, Shield of Light, which materializes just in time to block the crushing blow. Catching his breath, he realizes with a bead of sweat that the creature's initial onslaught was likely just a test of his capabilities. The three-headed monster watches him, its multiple sets of eyes gleaming with menace. A grim understanding dawns on him as he pants for air. If he continues to only defend against such overwhelming power, he will be the one who wears out first. He concludes that his only choice is to attack. With a new resolve, he activates another technique, two heaven circle flow, wind style, skywalk. Launching himself high into the air. From his aerial vantage point, he prepares to bring the fight to the beast, initiating his ultimate offensive. Two heaven circle flow, fire style, lion slash. He recoils from impact, grunting in exertion. His fiery attack proves useless against the colossal beast. He realizes with dawning dread that the red mana borrowed from Samire is limited, and a simple assault like that won't be enough. The beast's massive claws scrape against his blade, the sound grating as he grits his teeth, barely holding his ground against its overwhelming might. He quickly casts great healing on himself, knowing that even a triple-layered barrier would not have been enough to block the creature's assault. As he stands within the glow of his barrier magic, full body armor, a familiar voice calls his name. He grows anxious, aware that his own white mana won't last much longer either. He is trapped, wondering what he is supposed to do. The voice, Ellie's, offers a path forward. Make a contract with her. She explains that, according to what she once told him, they're already in a state of a temporary physical contract by virtue of being held by her, a state where their bodies are connected by mana. She appears before him in a vision, confirming that her mana is already inside his body, simply waiting for its turn to shine. If he truly wants power, she tells him, all he has to do is call her name anytime. The respite is short-lived as another blow from the beast sends him flying, crashing violently against the dungeon floor. He realizes with grim certainty that his only option to get out of this situation is to make a contract with the Demon Lord. But he immediately rejects the thought. No, he cannot do something that would endanger the continent again, remembering that Ellie is the very same Demon Lord who once ruled the southern continent. His thoughts waver. Is Ellie really evil? He recalls that the Ellie he knows can be outrageously arrogant, but she isn't a bad person. He acknowledges that there have been moments where he felt the terrifying presence of the Demon Lord in her, but he concludes that before she is the Demon Lord, she is simply Ellie. He concludes that it is an all-or-nothing gamble. With no other options, he must bet on Ellie. His expression hardens with resolve. He will trust her. With his decision made, he turns to face the colossal, three-headed hound of Hades looming before him. Raising his hand, he formally declares the pact, his voice ringing out. He, Eugene Santafield, hereby enters into a contract with the Demon Lord, Irenes. The moment the words are spoken, a torrent of unfamiliar power surges through him. He questions what this mana is, feeling a strange sense of omnipotence intertwined with a deep, unsettling dread. He recognizes it instantly. This is the mana of the Demon Lord. The immense power is far beyond what he can handle. He realizes with dawning horror that his very life force is being drained away, and his consciousness begins to slip. As he falters, a voice cuts through the haze in his mind. It is Ellie, asking what he is doing and frantically urging him to protect his mind with barrier magic. From her distant chamber, she calmly explains that since they now have a contract, a little telepathy between them is a given. Her tone sharpens as she senses his dire situation. She demands that he hurry up, warning him that if he doesn't, he will be reduced to a mindless vegetable. Spurred into action by her warning, he casts a spell, Barrier Magic, Heart of Steel. A protective aura immediately surrounds him, and he realizes with relief that the corrupting miasma no longer affects him. Now shielded and empowered, he stands firm, sword at the ready. A spectral image of Ellie appears behind him as her voice echoes in his mind with a final command. Now, Eugene, go get him. He channels the immense power, manifesting a blade of pure darkness. The technique is named Magic Sword, Darkblade. Before him, the three-headed hound of Hades snarls, its teeth bared in anticipation. The beast lets out a deafening growl, its power radiating outwards and flattening the surrounding terrain in a shockwave. Eugene stands his ground, a lone figure against the monstrous creature. He faces the colossal creature, a tense standoff in a newly cleared arena. The three heads of the Hound of Hades fix their gaze upon him, a unified, predatory focus. As he assesses the situation, Ellie's voice echoes in his mind. She observes that the little Cerberus has recognized him as a worthy opponent. Eugene, however, is struck by the sheer power the beast displayed, realizing it had effortlessly cleared away the dense forest with its roar alone. He grits his teeth in frustration. Ellie warns him that if the fight becomes any more serious, stalling for time will become impossible. He understands her point, realizing that he cannot yet wield complex magic with the Demon Lord's mana. In that case, he resolves to attack all at once, with the full intent to finish the fight quickly. He readies himself, addressing the beast. He lunges forward to fight, unleashing a powerful technique. Thunder-style secret art. Kirin, two-heaven circle flow. His body becomes a blur of motion, striking one of the beast's heads with blinding speed. The strike connects, but as he lands, he assesses the damage with a grimace. He only managed to take off one head. The beast shrieks in agony, but two heads still remain, glaring at him with renewed fury. Despite the setback, his determination does not waver. He clenches his fist, knowing he must raise his sword again. But as he prepares for his next move, the wounded beast begins to change. The stump of the severed neck erupts with dark energy, and to his shock, a new head begins to regenerate from the wound. He stands bewildered as a disembodied voice echoes around him, praising him as a splendid young swordsman. The voice's words hang in the air as the monstrous beast vanishes, leaving behind a barren, smoking landscape where Eugene now stands alone. His body trembles slightly, a bead of sweat tracing down his temple as he processes the sudden, silent emptiness of the arena. As he stands there, the same disembodied voice rings out once more, offering congratulations and declaring the challenger victorious. The declaration is punctuated by a sharp crack as the magic sword in his hand shatters, its form dissolving into particles of light. He clenches his fist, the truth of the situation finally sinking in. He has won. He has cleared the trial of the gods. Unseen by him, an observer chuckles softly from a distance. Ellie remarks that his performance was just as she expected. Her expression shifts to one of possessive triumph as she looks on with a predatory smile, declaring that now, Eugene is all hers. In the aftermath of the fierce battle, with a monstrous hound defeated, a formal declaration echoes through the cavern. Victory for the challenger. Summaries stands alone amidst the carnage, her expression somber as she processes the event. Her gaze immediately shifts from the fallen beast towards the cavern's exit, a look of urgent concern replacing her somberness as she peers into the forest beyond. Without hesitation, she sprints forward, her light cloak billowing behind her as she dashes out into the daylight. She pushes through the trees, her feet pounding against the forest floor as she desperately calls out a single name, Eugene Kuhn. Her desperate search is rewarded as her eyes land on a figure ahead, and a wave of relief washes over her face. It is Eugene. He stands alone, wiping sweat from his brow, looking utterly spent from his own ordeal. He turns, just now seeming to notice her approach. He barely has time to register her presence before she collides with him, throwing her arms around his torso in a desperate, relieved embrace while crying out his name once more. He catches her, his surprise giving way to concern as he asks if she is okay. Summaries dismisses his worry, insisting he is the one who needs attention, and urgently points toward a group of people, shouting for them to come over. Her call is answered as a rescue party emerges nearby. One of the arrivals announces that the dungeon staff are here to rescue them, bringing a sense of safety to the exhausted pair. As she looks closer at their rescuers, a flicker of recognition crosses her face. She realizes it is Leona and the other members of the martial arts club. Her recognition was met with the shouts of the rescue party. An academy official, leading the group, announced they had found the injured and called for the resurrection drops to be brought forward. She let out a breath of pure relief. Standing beside her, Eugene watched as Summaries realized the implication. If they had resurrection drops, her friends could be saved. The official then approached the pair, remarking that they were lucky, especially for having gone up against a divine beast. He assured them it looked like everyone could be revived, but Summaries only stared back, a flicker of confusion on her face. His words triggered a horrific memory of the scene she had just witnessed. She recalled the frantic search for a friend's missing leg and the grim instruction to gather scattered organs. Intellectually, she knew they could be revived, but the gruesome reality of their state was seared into her mind. The visceral recollection became too much to bear. Summaries broke down completely, wailing that there was no way she could remain calm. Eugene quickly moved to hold her, trying to soothe her as the official looked on, startled by her sudden outburst. While Eugene comforted the distraught girl, the official proceeded with his duty. He uncorked a small vial and carefully administered a single, shimmering resurrection drop onto one of the fallen students, where it splashed upon contact. Through her tears, Summary's gaze fixed on the scene, her breath catching in her throat as she watched. The effect was immediate. Leona Bianchi's eyes fluttered open, sparkling with renewed life. She sat up, looking around in a daze, confused about what had just happened to her. Seeing her friend alive and whole again, Summary's panic subsided into quiet disbelief. She stared at Leona and softly asked if she had died. Her question was met with a wave of relief from the others. The official and a newly revived Leona both called out Summary's name, overjoyed. Behind them, Eugene watched the reunion, a profound sense of gratitude washing over him. In the aftermath of the battle, an academy official approaches the revived Leona Bianchi, who is now sitting up and being tended to by Summary. He asks with concern if she is all right. She looks up, acknowledging that they were lucky this time. Summary listens as Leona admits with a sigh that their party was completely wiped out. The memory of their defeat flashes through Leona's mind. Her expression tightens as she considers the terrifying prospect of facing another floor boss of such insane difficulty, realizing that next time, they would surely perish. Elsewhere, Summary is lost in anxious thought. She clutches her cloak, lamenting that she has no clues regarding her own memories and fearing that if they continue on this dangerous path, both she and Eugene might die. Later, within the Lyceum Magic Academy headmaster's office, Eugene stands before King Uther Pendragon. Having just given a full account of the incident, he listens as the headmaster confirms he also watched via a relay device, but could not determine the cause of the anomaly on site. The headmaster's expression then breaks into a confident smile. He praises Eugene, stating that defeating the Hound of Hades was exactly the kind of feat he expected from him. Eugene and Summary stand silently as the headmaster falls into a moment of thought. He then shifts his focus, addressing them both with, "By the way," the king poses a question directly to them. "Do you two know the legend of the final dungeon?" Surprised, Eugene can only repeat the word, "A legend?" As an image of a colossal, leaning tower fills the view, the headmaster begins to explain. He states that for those who reach the 500th floor, the world gate shall open. He elaborates further, his gaze intense. The world gate, he explains, allows one to travel freely to other worlds. This knowledge, he reveals, comes from the explorer Christo, the one who holds the record for the highest floor ever reached. His words about the world gate hung in the air, causing both Eugene and Summary's eyes to widen with the immense implication. Eugene was the first to voice the question that had sprung into both their minds, asking if this meant Summary could finally return to her original world. From his desk, the headmaster confirmed it with a simple, "Indeed." The confirmation struck Summary with profound force. A wave of hope, tinged with disbelief, washed over her as she quietly wondered if she could truly go back. Her hope quickly turned to a practical concern. She turned to the headmaster and asked just how difficult it was to reach the 500th floor. Uther, leaning back in his chair, offered a sobering benchmark. In the last 500 years, only a single person had ever accomplished the feat. He acknowledged that it would certainly be a long and arduous road. However, leaning forward with a confident gaze, he declared that he had a feeling the two of them could achieve it. His confidence was not baseless. He noted that Summary's Ifris powers were steadily growing stronger. He elaborated further, predicting that with her current growth, she would eventually surpass even him. The praise left Summary momentarily stunned. The headmaster then turned his attention to Eugene, observing that he, too, seemed to have been acquiring an extraordinary power of his own. Eugene's expression tightened slightly at the pointed observation. Hearing the headmaster's immense faith in them both, Summary looked up at Eugene, her hands clutching her cloak, and asked with a whisper of hope, "We can do it." She looked to him for confirmation, her expression a mixture of hope and apprehension. Eugene met her gaze, his own eyes filled with a quiet, resolute determination. He looked at Summary, reminding her of the promise they had made. She was to find a clue to regain her lost memories, while he intended to set a new floor record to prove himself to someone named Airy. Her expression hardened with resolve as she affirmed her belief that they could make it. In response, he extended his gloved hand toward her. He smiled, formally inviting her to join him. "Let's go together, Summary," he proposed, asking her once again to be his partner. With a radiant smile, she accepted, her hand closing around his as she joyfully agreed. Watching their renewed partnership form, Headmaster Uther smiled with satisfaction. He encouraged them to do their best together, addressing Eugene with a hopeful tone. And so, guided by the headmaster, Eugene and Summary resolved to aim for the 500th floor. As they departed, however, an unforeseen obstacle awaited. The scene shifts to a private room where Eugene sits, looking tired. Before him, the demon queen, Ellie, greets him with a sly smile, chiding him for his tardiness. The demon lord's trial was lying in wait. In the present, Ellie smiles warmly at Eugene, asking how many days he thinks have passed since the divine beast incident. He looks away, slightly flustered, and apologizes, admitting that his reason for visiting the dungeon that day was not just for his regular duties. His thoughts drift back to a few days prior at the Lycia Magic Academy. As he and Samire were preparing to leave the headmaster's office, he had a sudden realization. Just as they were about to depart, the headmaster called out, asking for a moment with Eugene. Turning back, Eugene looked puzzled and asked what he wanted. The headmaster's gaze was sharp and direct. He bluntly asked Eugene if he had made a contract with the demon Lord Alinius. The question struck home, and Eugene realized with a start that the headmaster had seen right through him. Seeing the young man's grim expression, the headmaster softened his tone slightly, reassuring him that he was not being blamed. Eugene could only manage a quiet affirmation. He then explained the critical importance of secrecy. For the sake of relations with other nations, the demon lord is officially considered to be dormant and held by a seal. Therefore, the headmaster strictly forbade Eugene from speaking of the contract to anyone else. He leaned forward, emphasizing that only the two of them, Eugene and himself, were aware that she had truly awakened. The reason for this secrecy, he clarified, was to avoid causing needless anxiety for the citizens of the Labyrinth City. He confirmed this was the correct assumption. He elaborated further, explaining that the demon lord who once ruled the great southern continent still has many fanatical worshippers to this day. This secrecy was a necessary precaution to avoid agitating them. With a final, simple declaration, "That is all," the headmaster concluded the meeting. Eugene's eyes narrowed with determination, accepting the heavy burden. He had truly thought he was about to be locked up in the dungeon right alongside the demon lord. The headmaster, however, simply laughs, telling him not to worry about such an imprisonment. The headmaster continues, explaining that as far as he can tell, Eugene does not seem to be manipulated by the demon lord, so there is no need for such a drastic measure. Eugene internally processes this, recalling that the headmaster is said to possess the ability of sage's discernment, a power where a single look from his eyes can expose any secret. He realizes it must have been that power, those mystic eyes, that allowed the headmaster to so quickly determine that Samire was from another world. He can only wonder just how much the man can actually see through. The headmaster's voice cuts through his thoughts with a final, stern warning. Do not be ensnared by the demon lord. Eugene understands this condition is the price of his contract. Back in the present, within the dungeon's chambers, Ellie's voice breaks the silence. She casually informs Eugene that, just so he knows, he is not allowed to leave the dungeon. He stares at her, startled by the sudden declaration. He doesn't understand, questioning why he would need to leave for now anyway. Ellie, lying beside him, clarifies her statement. She was only demanding to be let out because he wasn't challenging the dungeon, and as a result, she was bored. She asks if he is sure he doesn't need to leave. She leans in closer, her fingers gently lifting his chin. With a knowing look, she tells him that the situation is about to change. Her eyes gleam with anticipation. She declares that since the dungeon's difficulty is going to get higher and higher, she will have to guide him herself. She listens as Eugene expresses his unease, stating that he cannot simply keep borrowing her power. He looks at her earnestly, asking what he can give her in return. In response, she places a hand on his chest and offers herself as an alternative. She then clarifies that, in her view, she has already received her payment from him. Leaning closer, she calls his name and provocatively asks how it felt to be connected to her when they first made their contract. The intimate question causes Eugene to flush, his eyes widening in shock. He stammers for her not to phrase it that way, completely flustered. From her side, a soft chuckle can be heard as her hand rests near him. Now on the bed, Eugene seeks clarification, asking if this means he doesn't need to provide any extra payment. Ellie confirms that is correct, but her voice trails off with a suggestive but. Her smile widens as she looks down at him, her wings slightly unfurled. Today, I think. She begins, her tone playful and full of intent. She finishes her thought with undisguised meaning, declaring that she will help herself to a great deal. Sometime later, Eugene's eyes flutter open. He finds Ellie sitting beside him, who calmly notes that he is awake. He sits up, disoriented, and wonders aloud if he passed out before his gaze falls upon an empty bottle on the floor. Having recovered and dressed, Eugene prepares to depart. Ellie asks if he can't stay a little longer, but he explains his plans. He is resuming his dungeon exploration tomorrow and needs to acquire a new sword. Seeing his resolve, Ellie quietly watches as he turns to leave. Just as he is about to go, she calls his name one last time and proposes to train him. She points out that he still can't properly control her power, reminding him how he was so exhausted he couldn't even move after their last battle. The offer makes him pause, his expression thoughtful. He blushes, flustered by her offer to train him. Ellie, noticing his reaction, playfully asks if they should do it again. When he seems confused, she reminds him of her previous words before questioning if he's being overly supportive, considering their contract has no price. She then leans in close, her dark wing draping over his shoulder as she clarifies her intent. It would be she, the demon queen, who would guide him. As she holds him, a cautionary thought echoes in Eugene's mind, a warning to himself not to be ensnared by the demon lord. He meets her gaze, his expression turning serious as he begins to speak, admitting that, to be honest, Ellie simply offers a confident, knowing smile in return. With a gentle push, she sends him tumbling back onto the bed. As he lies there, he internally admits that he truly doesn't understand the dangerous aura that seems to emanate from her. The scene abruptly shifts to a memory. Within the final dungeon, the Tower of the Zenith, on the 30th floor's master chamber, a young girl, Samire, lets out a desperate cry amidst the carnage of defeated lesser monsters. Her cry is directed toward the floor's master, a colossal, horned humanoid beast that lets out a deafening roar, its power shaking the chamber. From a safe distance, Samire watches the terrifying scene unfold, her voice filled with panic as she calls out for Eugene. In response to her call, Eugene, clad in his old academy uniform, flashes into action. With a single, powerful arc of his blade, he carves a path through the remaining minions and strikes the towering floor master. The battle concludes. As the floor master lies defeated, a formal announcement declares victory for the explorers. Samire cries out in relief that they've succeeded, to which Eugene, resting his sword on his shoulder, calmly agrees. He recalls that it has been a few days since he and Samire started exploring the dungeon together again. She walks beside him, a gentle smile on her face. This renewed partnership came after the Cerberus incident. Following that event, Samire was scouted by Leona Bianchi and joined the martial arts club. Eugene reflects that he effectively raised her. Thanks to her training, they reached the 30th floor without any problems, and without him needing to draw upon Ellie's power. He muses that while Samire claims she only knows the basics, her skills combined with the magical power of an Ifrit are incredible. Ahead of him, Samire cheerfully states that at this rate, they should be able to keep going. Their progress leads them to the 31st floor, a vast swamp area. Suddenly, a scream cuts through the humid air. The cry came from Samire, who has slipped and fallen into the murky water. Eugene turns, calling her name and asking if she is hurt. From the ground, she assures him that she is okay. As she struggles in the mud, he assesses the terrain, noting that the swampy footing will severely restrict Samire's martial arts. He quickly decides they must switch tactics, centering their attacks on his sword and fire magic for the time being. Just as he finishes his thought, a hulking figure rises from the swamp before them. A muscular, reptilian humanoid. He reacts instantly, throwing an arm out to shield Samire as he identifies the threat with a single word: lizardmen. His mind races with the implications. Lizardmen are monsters known for their high resistance to fire. For a duo who relies so heavily on fire attacks, this is a terrible matchup. Standing protectively before Samire, he curses himself. An ambush is exactly the kind of danger one should expect in a swamp, but he let his guard down. He gripped the hilt of his sword, his mind racing. If it had come to this, he had one option. Thanks to Ellie's training on how to control her power, he could now wield it without losing consciousness. The problem remained, however, his sword would shatter in a single strike. Compounding the issue, the elevator back to safety was still a long way off. His gaze met the monster's. The lizardman's scaled snout dripped with saliva, its reptilian eyes fixed on him. A single bead of sweat traced a path down Eugene's temple, but his expression remained firm and resolute. The full scale of their predicament was clear. He and a worried Samire stood before the hulking lizard man, dwarfed by its size. With his options limited and the stakes high, a single, urgent question dominated his thoughts. Now, what should I do? Eugene's attention snaps to a new threat. Before him stands a hulking, reptilian humanoid, its scaled fist clenched and its sharp teeth bared. Without warning, the lizard man leaps through the air, descending upon him with a crude weapon raised high. The attack triggers a memory of a past battle. A younger Eugene, in his academy uniform, desperately parries a similar creature's strike to shield Samire, who stands behind him. He recalls the chaos of that day, when he and Samire were forced to contend with an entire group of the reptilian warriors. Snapping back to the present, his past experience guides his blade as he intercepts the heavy blow from the lizardman's weapon. He grunts with effort, the force of the impact jarring him as he struggles against the monster's superior strength. After pushing the creature back, they stand opposite each other, swords raised in a tense standoff. His mind flashes back again to the futility of that fight. He had unleashed a torrent of fire, panting from the exertion, but the lizardmen simply walked through it as Samire watched with concern. The memory is clear. The lizardman emerged from the inferno completely unscathed. Eugene could only stare, shocked that even his Ifris fire magic had failed. This realization forces his hand in the present. Scooping Samire up, he begins to retreat, concluding that he has no choice. Considering there might be other monsters, he knows he cannot risk using his demon lord powers here. He concludes that his only option is to retreat. He pivots, digging his heel into the uneven ground to begin his escape. Carrying Samire in his arms, he flees across the rocky terrain, his sword still drawn but useless against this foe. A panicked glance over his shoulder confirms his fears. The lizard man is closing the distance with terrifying speed, its powerful legs kicking up dust as it gains on them. He curses as the creature's massive head looms over them, its maw open for a devastating strike. There is nowhere left to run. The realization hits him. He cannot outrun it on this kind of footing. As the lizardman's club-like arm swings down, he grunts with effort, thrusting his hand forward and desperately casting a defensive spell. Barrier magic, shield of light. A translucent barrier materializes just in time. At that moment, a new voice cuts through the chaos. A young woman with long, dark hair and an intense gaze watches the scene unfold, wondering aloud if this is where she should make her entrance. She doesn't wait for an answer. With calm determination, she strides past Eugene, positioning herself between him and Monster. In a flash of movement, she lunges forward with a massive, ornate spear. The weapon pierces the lizardman's torso, and the beast begins to dissolve into dark energy before it can even complete its attack. Eugene and Samire can only watch, stunned. She stands impassively over the dissipating remains of the monster, her spear held firmly. Behind her, Eugene's magical shield remains, a testament to the attack that was so effortlessly intercepted. In the aftermath of the battle, a new voice cuts through the air, calling Eugene's name. A young man in ornate armor, carrying a massive polearm, approaches with a confident smile. As he draws nearer, Samire looks to Eugene with concern, asking if he knows the newcomer. Eugene, still kneeling, confirms that he does, his tone weary. Eugene shouts the man's name, Claude, in a tone of exasperated surprise. Ignoring him, Claude moves past and takes Samire's hand, offering a polite greeting. With a charming smile, he introduces himself as Claude Percival. He leans in, stating that he has heard about her, the girl from another world. The smooth gesture and words leave Samire completely flustered, a deep blush rising on her cheeks. Claude continues his introduction, telling Samire Sashioji that she's just as cute as the rumors say. She can only stand there, overwhelmed by the attention. This behavior triggers a protective instinct in Eugene, who glares at his friend, his demeanor shifting into what could only be described as parental mode. Claude simply winks at Eugene, telling him to relax. He claims he was just messing around and wouldn't dare make a move on Eugene's partner, leaving both Eugene and Samire confused by his choice of words. To clear the air, Eugene explains to Samire that Claude is his best friend. He clarifies that Claude is one of the very few students in the elite hero course at the Magic Academy. Samire processes this, realizing he is another of the elites. Now understanding the situation better, Samire earnestly thanks Claude for saving them. Eugene quickly adds his own thanks, grateful for his friend's intervention. Claude accepts their gratitude. He stands beside Samire as Claude questions his presence, asking why an A-rank adventurer like him is exploring the lower floors of the dungeon. In response, Eugene explains that he was simply exploring solo for a change of pace, though he also admits he was running from a messy situation. One he internally notes likely involved girls again. Claude then offers to lend a hand for a while, pointing out that even someone as capable as Eugene, who apparently once took down a divine beast, seems to be having a hard time in this area. The offer leaves Samire momentarily surprised. He presses the point, asking about their party's plans and asserting that Eugene can't intend to explore solo forever. Eugene, looking uncertain, admits that they would honestly appreciate the help, though his hesitation is clear. Samire turns to him, asking if he is sure. To ease his friend's mind, Claude explains that his own party has already achieved its short-term goal, leaving him with no scheduled dungeon runs for a while. Eugene reacts with surprise, not having known this. With a sly smile, Claude adds that there is another reason. He cheerfully declares that he is always happy to help his best friend and a cute girl, gesturing towards Samire. Both she and Eugene are momentarily stunned by his forwardness. And so, with the matter settled, Eugene expresses his gratitude, genuinely glad to have Claude with them. It is officially decided. Claude will temporarily join their party. Samire enthusiastically pushes Eugene toward him, declaring that he's all Claude's now. Just then, a large one-eyed plant monster lunges at them. Without hesitation, Claude leaps forward, polearm raised high, shouting for the others to leave it to him as he brings his weapon down in a powerful strike. The creature is dispatched in a single, decisive blow. Standing over its vanquished form, Samire cheers with excitement, remarking that this is her first time in a party with Claude. Eugene, meanwhile, looks on with a hint of weary resignation. He reflected on Claude's immense value to their party. As an A-rank adventurer who had already cleared the 100th floor, Claude was not only a huge help in battle, but had also taught them all sorts of dungeon-crawling tips. His thoughts continued, landing on his friend's one significant flaw, his constant flirting, a trait on full display as Claude charmed a woman with ease. The memory faded. On the day of the 44th floor boss battle, Eugene and Samire stood waiting at the entrance to the Tower of Babel. Samire noted Claude's tardiness, hoping he wasn't out hitting on another girl. A voice from behind them declared that if they were waiting for Claude, he wasn't coming. Turning, they saw Sarah, the student council president. Eugene reacted with shock, calling her name. He nervously asked what she meant by Claude not coming. He stammered a confused apology, as if he were somehow at fault. Internally, he recognized the situation was already an absolute mess. Sarah explained with a stern look. Claude was supposed to prioritize his promise to Eugene, but he was caught two-timing her best friend with a girl from the martial arts club. As Eugene processed this, Sarah continued. She had told Claude to sincerely apologize to both women first, and, in his place, she had offered to come help Eugene's party. Her explanation concluded with a forceful step, the ground cracking slightly under the heel of her boot. With that implication hanging in the air, she turned to Eugene with a charming smile, stating she was looking forward to working with him. He was utterly bewildered, questioning the idea of the three of them forming a party. Sarah casually clarified that she was including Sumire as well, much to Sumire's own surprise. He tried to rationalize the sudden change in his party. Sarah was a student in the hero course, just like Claude, and they had adventured together before. He had no doubts about her abilities or their coordination. But still, a deep sense of unease lingered. As he hesitated, Sarah turned to Sumire, suggesting she stay back in case her magic went out of control. Bristling at the insinuation, Sumire retorted that perhaps Sarah should be the one to stay back, lest she get burned. An unspoken tension crackled between the two women, their glares locking as Eugene stood helplessly between them. He broke into a cold sweat, wondering how they could possibly face a floor boss when they were already at each other's throats. Far from the dungeon's entrance, within the halls of power in Dungeon City, the High Council was in session. Known as the Round Council, they oversaw all matters concerning the great tower that loomed over the city. A figure seated on a high throne gave the command to proceed. A woman in ornate armor stepped forward, raising her hand. "May I give my report?" she asked, her identity announced as the seventh knight, Isolde Tristan. She began her address to the council. "Regarding the matter of the divine beast Cerberus that appeared on the 20th floor of the final dungeon, we have determined the likely cause." Her words sent a ripple of shock through the chamber, as council members reacted with audible surprise. Isolde's expression remained firm as she continued. "While their motives are unclear, we have a lead on the perpetrators." She delivered her stunning conclusion. The masterminds, she revealed, are a group that worships the demon lord, a cult known as the Order of the Serpent. An image of their dark faith appeared, hooded figures kneeling before a winged, demonic idol bearing a striking resemblance to the demon queen. As the report on the Order of the Serpent concludes, the council chamber stirs. One of the members, his voice thick with fury, condemns the existence of such heretics and damned cultists. This outburst, however, elicits only a faint sound of acknowledgement from King Utherpendragon. A knowing smirk plays on his lips as he steeples his fingers, his mind already turning. He had been waiting for this. He realizes that they have finally made a move. Within the final dungeon, the Tower of Babel, a battle rages in the 40th floor's boss chamber. A woman in a nun's habit stands ready against a massive griffin. Behind her, an exhausted warrior calls out a name, Kultana. This present danger triggers a memory from roughly 1 year ago at the Lyceum Magic Academy's entrance ceremony. The same woman, Sarah, stands amongst the crowd, contemplating her new life studying abroad. Her thoughts drift further back to a conversation with one of the 8 saints, the supreme leaders of the Holy Kingdom of Cardia. The saint confidently stated that Sarah would go to the academy. When Sarah asked what is required of a saint candidate, the saint's answer was simple: to always possess integrity and dignity. The saint then looked at her with piercing certainty, declaring that this was exactly why the assignment was perfect for her. Sarah reflects on this judgment. Though she was a nun, she was terrible at healing magic but much better with a sword, leading to her being judged a failure as a saint candidate. Consequently, she was removed from the main race to become a saint and instead tasked with a new mission: to investigate talented individuals from other nations at the academy, where the prodigies of the southern continent gather. The memory of the saint's words continues. She had told Sarah to focus on her investigation for now, reassuring her that if she could distinguish herself at the academy, there was still a good chance she could become a saint. Back at the academy entrance hall, Sarah observes her new surroundings. Just as her files indicated, the heirs of nobles and candidates for high-ranking positions from every country were all gathered in one place. Her gaze sweeps across the room and stops, catching sight of a young man sitting alone by a large window. A flicker of recognition crosses her face. She identifies him instantly. He is the son of the Empire's strongest swordsman, a figure she has heard so much about. Observing him from afar, she wonders why someone of his renowned lineage is in the general course area. He sat alone on a bench within the academy grounds when a figure approached, hesitating for a moment. The newcomer was Sarah. She looked at Eugene and politely asked if she might sit next to him. Sarah recalls this memory, thinking to herself that this was the moment she first met Eugene. As she got to know him, she came to a realization. Both of them had experienced their own significant setbacks before coming to the academy. Because of this shared history, she felt a unique comfort, as if she could be her true self around him. Her perspective shifted over time. Initially, Eugene was nothing more than a target for her investigation. But as she was exposed to his genuine personality, she found herself wanting to be by his side out of her own free will. And then, a pivotal moment occurred. Standing before a chapel statue, Eugene questioned Sarah's intentions, asking if she was sure about her proposed course of action. She affirmed it confidently, stating that it was what was needed for a partner contract, an ancient ritual. She insisted it was a custom in her country, even though such rituals were no longer common practice. With that, she leaned forward, sealing their pact with a kiss. Pulling back, a blushing Sarah declared them to be official partners. She gripped his hand, admitting to herself how desperately she had yearned for him. The memory fades. The 6 months they spent as a party of two passed in a flash. Sarah's voice concludes, "That concludes my report, Your Holiness." She recalled the moment in her dorm room at the Lyceum Magic Academy. As the saint and her retinue prepared to depart, the holy woman turned back, stating she had a gift for Sarah. The sudden offer caught her off guard, and a magical sigil began to form in the air before her. From the glowing circle of light, a sword materialized. The saint explained that this was their kingdom's treasured blade, Cortana, also called the Sword of Mercy. Sarah could only stare in astonishment as she took hold of the legendary weapon. She was told that with this treasured sword, she would be able to compensate for her noted weakness in healing magic. The magnitude of the gift was overwhelming, and Sarah questioned in disbelief why she was being given something so valuable. Her shock was compounded by a direct order from the saint. She was to aim for even greater heights and transfer to the hero course immediately. This directive created an immediate and significant barrier. As a general course student, Eugene knew he could no longer remain in his current party, as it was not customary for students from the general and hero courses to form partnerships. The implication horrified Sarah. As the thought "no way" raced through her mind, the saint continued, assuring her that she needn't worry about the investigation into Eugene any longer, as it was now considered complete. Her hands tightened around the hilt of her new sword. Noticing her distress, the saint inquired if something was the matter. She turned away, hiding her expression. "No," she replied, forcing herself to thank the holy woman for her consideration. And so, she had made her choice. She couldn't disobey the saint's orders, nor could she bear to expose Eugene to the jealousy that would arise from their difference in status. From that day on, she focused entirely on distinguishing herself at the academy, eventually being elected student council president and becoming a holy knight, all while waiting for the right moment. She had decided in her heart that once she broke through the 100th floor and her duties as president were settled, she would team up with Eugene again. But as this memory concluded, her focus was violently shattered. A sudden imminent danger prompted a desperate shout. "Look out!" Her shouted warning comes just as the massive griffin, the 40th floor's boss, dives from above. From a distance, a voice cries out her name, "Sarah San." The beast's proximity throws her to the ground beside Samire. Sarah realizes with dawning horror that she hadn't finished it off. Eugene's voice cuts through the chaos, yelling for both Samire and Sarah to run. But there is no time. The beast's enormous talons plummet towards them, kicking up dust and debris from the ground. Helpless on the ground, both Sarah and Samire stare upwards in wide-eyed terror at their impending doom. In a flash of movement, Eugene lunges between them and the beast, his sword meeting the griffin's sharp talons with a resounding clang. He strains, pushing the massive creature back and away from the two women on the ground. From behind him, both Samire and Sarah call out his name, their voices filled with a mixture of relief and concern. Sarah urgently points out that he is nearly depleted of mana, insisting they must link their power immediately. Eugene glances down at his hand, watching the last vestiges of his energy dissipate into nothing, his expression unreadable. He turns his head slightly, dismissing her concern. He tells them it's okay, ordering them to stand back. Alone, he stands his ground, sword at the ready, watching as the griffin regains altitude to strike again. He digs his heel into the ground, bracing himself for an attack. Behind him, Sarah and Samire watch, utterly bewildered by his stance, as he was supposed to be completely out of mana. In a sudden, impossible burst of power, he lunges forward, his sword erupting in brilliant flames. He unleashes a devastating technique. The two heaven circle flow, fire style, lion slash, directly at the griffin. The fiery attack obliterates the beast and carves a massive, smoldering crater into the dungeon wall. As the dust begins to settle, Sarah and Samire cry out his name in alarm. Eugene remains standing, his sword glowing with residual heat as it begins to crumble. They stare in disbelief at the aftermath. Sarah, her voice filled with awe, asks what that power was, admitting she has never witnessed mana of that kind before. Eugene explains that it's a new magic sword technique he learned recently. He tells them he was only able to use it once before, during his fight with a divine beast, and hasn't used it since. Sarah looks at him, a flicker of concern on her face, as she wonders aloud if this means he no longer needs her mana. He clarifies that this is not the case. The method ruins the sword in a single use, and afterward, his movements become sluggish from extreme fatigue. Because of this, he explains, it can only be used as a trump card. Samire listens, understanding the high cost of the move. Hearing the severe drawbacks, Sarah's expression hardens with worry. She exclaims that he doesn't look well at all and asks if he's pushing himself too hard. He tries to brush off her worry, insisting that he feels fine. Samire, however, sides with Sarah, gently urging Eugene to get some rest. Faced with their unified concern, Eugene finally relents. He agrees, deciding that they will call it a day for exploring. As he makes the decision, Sarah watches him with a pensive expression. She realizes that while her attention has been consumed by Samire, she has a growing feeling that something about Eugene has been different lately. She watched from the academy entrance as Eugene waved goodbye from a distant bridge, calling out that he would see them tomorrow. She then turned her attention to the girl beside her, calling out to Samire. With a final wave, Samire wished Eugene well, telling him to take care. Pulling up her hood, her expression grew serious as she asked Samire if she had a moment to speak. The sudden request left Samire startled and questioning. Unfazed, Sarah looked at her with a confident smile, resolving internally that her first priority was to win the girl over to her side. Within the boss chamber of the Zenith Tower's 50th floor, the massive storm dragon lets out a deafening roar, confronting the party of adventurers below. Eugene finds himself too far to strike, but Sarah steps forward, assuring him she will handle it. As she raises her hand, magical runes begin to glow brightly around her. In response to her incantation, a colossal pillar of fire erupts from the ground, a king-class fire magic spell known as Flame Giant. With her eyes squeezed shut in concentration, Sarah commands the fiery behemoth to move. Summaries shouts encouragement, urging her to go for it, as the Flame Giant's arm smashes into the dragon, which roars in pain. The fiery tendrils of the spell completely envelop the storm dragon, which thrashes and lets out an agonized scream as it is consumed by the inferno. The dragon continues to struggle within the searing flames, its form becoming obscured by the intense heat as Sarah and Summaries watch the powerful spell take its full effect. Observing that the attack went as planned, Sarah immediately prepares her next assault. She calls upon the Sword of Niso and extends her hand, gathering magical energy once more. She unleashes her follow-up spell, Holy Sword Magic, Blade of Light. A gigantic sword formed from pure, brilliant light materializes above and plunges down toward the burning dragon. The Blade of Light slams into the storm dragon, pinning it under the dual assault. As the beast is immobilized, both Summaries and Sarah cry out Eugene's name, signaling that his moment has come. With the dragon restrained and wounded, Eugene unleashes his own power, invoking the Nitin and Mei style. The beast lets out a final, agonized roar as it faces the combined might of the party. He unleashes his ultimate technique, Thunder Form Kirin. The blade flashes, cleaving through the storm dragon's neck and ending the battle in a decisive, bloody spray. With the beast vanquished, he turns to his companions, a faint smile on his face. A voice rings out, congratulating him on a champion's victory. Sarah and Summaries rush to his side. Sarah declares that they were all brilliant, and Eugene agrees, specifically praising Summaries. He notes that her magical precision has improved, and that she can now use king-class magic since she started using a staff. Summaries beams, proudly stating it's the result of his fire magic classes. Sarah admits she was truly overwhelmed by the fight. As Eugene senses a subtle shift in the air between the two girls, Sarah leans in and playfully winks at Summaries, whispering that something between them is a secret. This secret traces back to a few days prior. Sarah had confronted Summaries about an agreement, a promise that neither would make a move on Eugene behind the other's back. Sarah pointed out that their current combat coordination was poor and that they were putting a burden on him. Summaries had agreed, stating she didn't want to rely on his help and, more importantly, didn't want him to use his mysterious, dangerous power. Unbeknownst to them, their exchange was broadcast on a satellite relay, where viewers interpreted it as a love triangle, much to Sarah's visible frustration. To quell such rumors, the two had shaken hands, establishing a formal agreement to get along. Back in the present, Eugene watches their newfound rapport with utter confusion, admitting to himself that while he doesn't get it, the matter seems to be settled. Their respite is brief. While walking through the Labyrinth City's noble district, the party is informed they have been summoned to the mansion of Lady Isolde, one of the headmaster's direct 12 knights. Eugene wonders what business a city guardian could have with him. They are greeted at the mansion by a woman with long, light-toned hair. She apologizes for receiving them in casual clothes, explaining it's her day off, and introduces herself as Isolde Tristan. Eugene analyzes her posture, recognizing the flawless readiness of an S-rank explorer who has surpassed the 200th floor. Inside, Isolde congratulates them on clearing the 50th floor, praising their magnificent performance and the excellent cooperation between Sarah and Summaries. She then pauses, clarifying that this praise is not the reason she called them there, and promises to be brief. She began her explanation, revealing that they had identified the culprit who caused the divine beast Cerberus to appear on the 20th floor. Eugene reacted with shock, processing the implication that the abnormal situation was man-made. He questioned how it was even possible for human hands to manipulate the appearance of a divine beast. She confirmed his suspicion, stating the culprits are people who worship the demon king Erinys. As Eugene wondered if Eri knew about this, Sarah expressed her shock. Summaries, however, recalled a recent lesson. Worshipping the demon king is forbidden, but because of this, believers are difficult to identify. She continued, providing more specific intelligence. Shortly before Cerberus appeared, there was a record of a certain explorer, believed to be a follower of the cult, challenging the 100th floor. Instead of fighting the divine beast there, they were discovered teleporting it away. Isolde noted that while the reason is unknown, they must have a goal, and this act does not count as clearing the floor. She then asked if they knew of a group called the Snake Cult. Without waiting for an answer, she added that the explorer is now on the most wanted list, but the members of this cult are exceptionally skilled at hiding. She confirmed that this time, however, they have proof that the culprits are believers. Her tone then shifted, becoming lighter as she noted with a smile that Eugene's party would also be challenging the 100th floor soon. Eugene, still trying to understand the cult's motivations, asked why they would do such a thing. Changing the subject entirely, She invited them to stay for dinner since they had come all this way. Sumire accepted with delight, thanking her profusely. Eugene, however, remained preoccupied, silently questioning why Isolde was sharing all this sensitive information with them. She answered his unspoken question directly, stating it was because they were the parties involved in the Cerberus incident. She then gave them a directive. Keep this conversation confidential and report any clues about the culprits they might find. If they encounter them, they're to let her know. The directness of the order made Eugene realize her way of thinking was strikingly similar to the king's. As they left, with Sumire chatting happily beside him, Eugene was lost in thought. The pieces connected in his mind. The snake cult that worships the demon king Aerie caused Cerberus to appear, and at that very time, he had made a contract with Aerie to defeat the beast. He stared ahead, his expression grim, wondering if it could all truly be a coincidence. On the 51st floor of the final labyrinth, Eugene Santafield stands with his temporary companions, looking ahead with a determined gaze. The air is thick with anticipation for the challenges that lie deeper within the dungeon. His intense focus does not go unnoticed. Isolde Tristan asks if something is the matter. He doesn't respond, his senses fixated on an unsettling gaze he feels upon him, though its source is unseen. The feeling is a stark contrast to the conversation he'd had just a few hours ago. In a flashback, Sumire had asked if he was leaving the party for a while. He confirmed that Sarah was temporarily departing to help the student council, which was incredibly short-staffed. As Sarah walked away, Sumire wondered aloud if this meant it would be just the two of them exploring from now on. Before he could answer, Sarah had turned back, leaning in close to Sumire with a playful but firm warning not to try and steal him away. Sumire acknowledged her with a simple, "I know, Sarah." Sarah then promised to rejoin them as soon as things settled down with the council. Back in the present, on the 51st floor, Eugene contemplates the implications of Sarah's absence. He knows the monsters will only become more diverse, making their close combat focus a liability. He recalls the powerful, long-range fire giant Sumire summoned, but acknowledges that such demanding magic can't be a solution for every fight. His thoughts turn to Sarah's record of reaching the 89th floor. Surpassing it while she's away would be ideal, but the path is fraught with new difficulties. This line of thought brings him back to another part of his earlier conversation. He had suggested to Sumire that they use this opportunity for some individual training to reassess their combat capabilities. He clarified his belief that what they needed most was to improve their mana control, a skill each of them had to master on their own. Reflecting on his own advice, he stands before the towering labyrinth and considers his options. He wonders what training he can even do besides swordsmanship. His thoughts are interrupted by Claude Percival's voice, who asks if he is, perhaps, the son of the Imperial Sword. He turns in surprise to find Claude looking at him with recognition. Claude confirms he is an explorer from the Glenflare Empire, and that his party serves under the Imperial Army. He explains that it is their greatest pride to have stood with Eugene's father against the crisis facing the Empire, revealing they joined the esteemed man during the recent Ancient Dragon subjugation plan. Eugene is stunned to realize just how famous he has become. The revelation leaves him momentarily speechless as Claude continues, explaining that when they heard Eugene was the son of the Imperial Sword, his many feats, like defeating Cerberus with the satellite system, all made perfect sense. Claude then casually asks why the young ladies aren't with him, causing Eugene to flush with embarrassment as he realizes the extent of the rumors circulating about him. Seeing his opening, Claude presses his advantage with a forceful request. He asks if Eugene would accompany their exploration just for the day, explaining his own party is on hold. Pleading that their meeting must be fate, he insists on learning from Eugene's swordsmanship up close. Before Eugene can properly refuse, Claude frames the offer as part of his training, leaving him little choice as they stand at the entrance to the 51st floor. He listens as Claude expresses his excitement to see his swordsmanship, suggesting that with his skills, Eugene could be reinstated as an officer candidate. Eugene, however, dismisses the idea, stating he dropped out and is now just a regular student. He thinks to himself that it's impossible for a magic swordsman like him to be reinstated. His thoughts drift to Sumire. He knows he can't take her with him to the Empire, as the Demon King's mana she borrows can only be used near the Zenith Tower. The realization weighs on him. In the end, he feels he is still just a swordsman who cannot fight alone. As he is lost in his internal conflict, Claude notices his distraction and asks if something is the matter. Suddenly, Eugene's senses flare. He feels an unsettling gaze upon them and warns that something is here. From the nearby foliage, a hulking lizard man emerges. The creature lunges to attack, but Eugene reacts instantly. With a flash of steel, he draws his sword and parries the monster's strike, their weapons clashing with a sharp clang. The party is taken aback to see not one, but 3 lizard men. They note the strangeness of the situation, as lizard men are typically a solitary species. Taking charge, Isolde rallies the group, declaring that as proud soldiers of the Glenflare Imperial Army, they must stand their ground. In response to her call, a much larger horde of lizard men charges forward. Facing the overwhelming numbers, Claude takes command and bellows the order to annihilate them. After the battle concludes, Claude admits that if it weren't for Eugene, they would have been in real danger. His relief is cut short as he spots a figure in the distance. He calls out, asking if someone is there, his attention fixed on a mysterious person completely obscured by a cloak. The figure vanishes in a flash of light, startling Isolde and Claude. While Isolde dismisses the person as just another explorer, Eugene corrects her, stating with certainty that all he saw was a gray robe. His words hang in the air. He stands in a moment of quiet contemplation, the image of the gray robe clearly fixed in his mind. As he walks on, a bead of sweat forms on his temple. He looks down, his mind racing. He can't shake the feeling that this encounter is more than it seems, wondering if it's just another coincidence in a string of strange events. His suspicions still fresh, he made his way to the 7th prison block, a sealed great underground dungeon. Inside, he found the demon queen, Ellie, sleeping peacefully in her bed. He reached out, his fingers gently brushing against her hair as he murmured her name, Eri. The light touch stirred her from her sleep. Sumire, also present, called out to him as Ellie's eyes fluttered open. Now more alert, Ellie sat up and asked what was wrong, a playful glint in her eyes as she questioned if he'd come all this way just to assault her. Ignoring her playful jab, his expression remained serious. He presented a dark, heart-shaped artifact with a serpent coiled around its center. You recognize this mark, don't you? He asked, his gaze fixed on her.